Chapter 437. The wall collapsed, giving Zhu Lin and Ji Yilan a fright. However, when Zhu Lin saw Wan Xiaoyuan walk in from outside the wall, he immediately revealed a smug and mocking smile. So it's you. I heard that after you lost in the arena last time, you went to cry. You're really useless. Now you actually dare to appear here. Why? Do you want to fight me, or do you want to see me having fun with Lan? At this point, Zhu Lin unscrupulously hugged Ji Yilan in his arms. Ji Yilan also revealed a charming smile, completely ignoring Wan Xiaoyuan's existence. However, Zhu Lin didn't expect that Wan Xiaoyuan would stretch out his hands with hatred. Immediately, dozens of cold nether threads surged out, and were about to strangle Zhu Lin. Tisk, it's still the same old trick. Zhu Lin still looked down on Wan Xiaoyuan, thinking that he was still using the extreme cold ice silk hands. However, as soon as he unsheathed his sword, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Wan Xiaoyuan's cold nether threads were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded Zhu Lin like a spider web. Furthermore, there were streams of cold air rushing over, causing Zhu Lin to feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Zhu Lin finally realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late for him to react. In a hurry, he could only stab out a few times in a row. Unfortunately, the extreme fire absolute sword he was so proud of was unable to do anything to the cold nether threads. Suddenly, those seemingly soft cold nether threads became like spears, instantly shattering Zhu Lin's sword and fiercely stabbing into his body. Zhu Lin was immediately bathed in blood. What made him even more terrified was that there were streams of netherworld energy invading his body and mercilessly devouring his vitality. At this moment, Zhu Lin looked at Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes that were filled with killing intent and hatred. He finally began to regret it. Although he didn't know why Wan Xiaoyuan had suddenly become so strong, he knew that if he didn't escape, he would die here. With great difficulty, Zhu Lin took out the crimson bead from his mustard seed bag. Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. With a move of his arms, the cold nether threads became soft and boneless again, binding Zhu Lin and making him unable to move. This time, Zhu Lin was truly in despair. The cold nether threads were getting tighter and tighter, and the netherworld chi was constantly invading. He could only exclaim, Wan Xiaoyuan, are you crazy? You dare to kill me? Do you know the consequences of killing me? The extreme fire manor would definitely fight to the death with the bipolar village. You are harming yourself, harming the bipolar mountain village. However, Wan Xiaoyuan acted as if he didn't hear Zhu Lin's words. His spiritual power surged as dozens of cold underworld threads squeezed Zhu Lin's body, causing blood to seep out. Wan Xiaoyuan smiled ferociously when he saw the blood. Die, Puchi. Zhu Lin was instantly killed by the cold underworld threads. Blood flew everywhere, and he no longer looked like a human. The blood-red color in Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes began to fade slowly. His body swayed and was about to fall down. At this moment, he saw Ji Yilan with a frightened expression. Ji Yilan immediately cried out, Xiaoyuan, don't kill me. Don't kill me. I was forced. Forced. Wan Xiaoyuan smiled bitterly and didn't look at her again. He was about to leave this place in a daze. Now that Zhu Lin was dead and his great hatred had been avenged, he didn't feel the slightest bit of joy in his heart. However, Leng Shiqi suddenly rushed over. He grabbed Wan Xiaoyuan's shoulder and said angrily, How can you be so foolish? I taught you the spiritual technique, so that you can defeat Zhu Lin, not kill him. Do you know how much disaster you have brought to the bipolar village? Wan Xiaoyuan and Zhu Lin didn't fight for long, but the commotion was not small. At this moment, many people had already gathered their heads to look over. At this moment, Wan Xiaoyuan also regained some rationality. He panicked and asked, Senior, what should we do now? What should we do? Of course we have to escape. There are many disciples of the extreme fire manor in this city. Let's escape before they know about this. Upon hearing Leng Shiqi's words, Wan Xiaoyuan finally reacted and hurriedly rushed out of the door. But just as he was about to escape, he turned around and asked, Senior, what about you? Leng Shiqi said softly, I have my own way to escape, but I don't want to be involved in such a big mistake. From now on, our fate is over. We won't meet again. Wan Xiaoyuan's figure paused, But he also knew that he had made a big mistake. He didn't want to involve Leng Shiqi, so he immediately escaped. After he left, Leng Shiqi turned to look at Ji Yilan. At this time, the grievance on Ji Yilan's face was gone. She said with a bit of fear, "I've done what you asked me to do. You should also fulfill your promise." "Don't worry, the people of the Ji family won't be in danger. On the contrary, they will get some precious resources, but..." Leng Shiqi looked at Ji Yilan with murderous intent. Ji Yilan said in horror, What do you want to do?" After a few breaths, Ji Yilan became a corpse, and the way she died was no different from Zhu Lin's. Leng Shiqi then quietly left. At the same time, the people who were watching the show also came over. As soon as they came in, they saw two tragic corpses on the ground. From the appearance, it was impossible to recognize who they were. But these people still recognized the scattered swords and clothes. The two corpses were actually the young master of the Extreme Fire Manor, Zhu Lin, and his fiancée, Ji Yilan. They then thought of Wan Xiaoyuan, who had just fled in panic, and a shocking thought appeared in everyone's mind. It was Wan Xiaoyuan who killed Zhu Lin and Ji Yilan. It was not a big deal for him to kill Ji Yilan. After all, the Ji family was only a small family. But Zhu Lin was different. The Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold had decades of enmity. Now that Wan Xiaoyuan had killed Zhu Lin, it was very likely that the two sides would fight to the death. Everyone present knew that the vicinity of Shining City would not be peaceful in the near future. At this time, the news of Wan Xiaoyuan killing Zhu Lin had spread throughout the entire Shining City in just a few minutes, as if it had grown wings under the influence of some people with ulterior motives. There were many disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold in the city. When they heard the news, they immediately took action. The people of the Extreme Fire Manor naturally chased after Wan Xiaoyuan, while the people of the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold had to protect Wan Xiaoyuan. Battle after battle broke out in the middle of the night. At first, the battle only revolved around Wan Xiaoyuan, but it was inevitable that there would be casualties in a battle. In addition, both sides had long disliked each other, so it gradually evolved into a chaotic battle between a large number of disciples. In a dilapidated house in Shining City, there were about 20 people standing. When they heard the fighting outside, one of them said, "Brother Lu's plan has succeeded. Next it's our turn." Chapter 438. In Jihuo Manor, the owner of the manor, Zhu Horong, was playing chess with First Elder He. Beside them, a man was standing with his hands behind his back. They were the top 3 masters of Jihuo Manor, all of whom were masters of Gang Spirit Realm. More than a year ago, there were only 2 masters of Gang Spirit Realm in Jihuo Manor. At that time, Jihuo Manor had swallowed most of the resources, but one of them, who was at the peak of Spirit Aperture Realm, had some inspiration in the battle with Jihuo Manor, and broke through to Gang Spirit Realm. This made Jihuo Manor a blessing in disguise. A master of Gang Spirit Realm was far more precious than those resources. But at this moment, a man ran in hurriedly from outside. Zhu Horong frowned. He had a bad temper. The reason why he played chess with others was to relieve his bad temper. Seeing the man come in, he knew that the man must have something urgent. He said unhappily, "What's the hurry? Tell me slowly." Manor master. Young Heights Lord he. Zhu Horong saw the man stuttering and had an ominous premonition. He picked him up instantly and asked, "What happened to the Young Heights Lord?" "Young Heights Lord, he is dead. He was killed by Wan Xiaoyuan." Boom. It was as if a bolt from the blue had struck Zhu Horong's head, making him feel dizzy. Impossible. Zhu Horong roared to the sky. His son was dead? He had a son at an old age, and Zhu Lin was a rare genius. He was waiting to hand over Jihuo Manor to Zhu Lin in the future. But now his son was dead. Zhu Horong emitted visible flames all over his body, burning the air around him and twisting it. The first elder next to him was much calmer. He asked hurriedly, "What the hell is going on? Tell me." The messenger said hurriedly, "Young Heights Lord was killed by Wan Xiaoyuan in a restaurant in Shining City. Many people saw it at that time. Later, the brothers in the city all went to kill Wan Xiaoyuan after knowing it, but the people of Bipolar Mountain Village also came to stop them. Now there have been more than a dozen battles in Saining City, and dozens of brothers have died in the hands of Bipolar Mountain Village. Manor Lord, you must avenge the young Manor Lord, and avenge our fellow disciples. Zhu Huarong was already furious. He roared, lead all the experts in the manor to Saining City. I want to kill Wan Xiaoyuan with my own hands. However, He Ho stopped him. Manor Lord, please calm down. This matter is strange. Wan Xiaoyuan's strength is obvious to all. How could he possibly kill the young Manor Lord with his strength? There must be something fishy going on here. Perhaps this is a plot against you, Manor Lord. So what? Zhu Huarong didn't listen to He Ho at all. He said, should I just sit back and watch if Luan dies? He is my son, my only son. Even if there is a conspiracy, I am not afraid. He Ho was even more worried about letting Zhu Huarong take the risk, so he advised earnestly, Manor Lord, please calm down. As the Manor Lord, if anything happens to you, then our extreme fire manor will definitely fall into a bottomless abyss. How about this? Let Ji-Wen take some experts to capture Wan Xiaoyuan. As long as we capture Wan Xiaoyuan, we can use him to threaten the bipolar stronghold. At the same time, we can also test if there is anything fishy. If there is nothing fishy, it will not be too late for you to do it yourself. Zhu Huarong's face was gloomy, and he was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. He couldn't wait to kill Wan Xiaoyuan right now, but as He Ho said, he was the head of a sect and couldn't be impulsive. He panted and hesitated for a while, but still nodded heavily. He Ho said to the man who had been standing beside him, Ji-Wen, immediately take 30 disciples in the 4 realms of celestial being to capture Wan Xiaoyuan alive. Yes. Ji-Wen was a new expert in the gang spirit realm of the extreme fire manor. He immediately went out with the messenger. He asked, where is Wan Xiaoyuan now? Near the Whitelong Valley. On the other side of the bipolar stronghold, Xiao Jingwu, the head of the bipolar stronghold, also got the news that Wan Xiaoyuan killed Zhu Luan. His first reaction was that it was impossible. Others didn't know Wan Xiaoyuan's ability, but he, as his master, knew it best. He was the first one who didn't believe that Wan Xiaoyuan could kill Zhu Luan head-on. But the fact was in front of him. Wan Xiaoyuan really did it. Xiao Jingwu couldn't help but remember that Wan Xiaoyuan had said a few days ago that he would take back his glory sooner or later. Alas, what has Xiaoyuan experienced these days? How did he kill Zhu Luan? How dare he kill Zhu Luan? The extreme fire manor had lost many disciples in the spiritual pulse realm in the phantom spirit secret realm, and many resources had been stolen by an evil beast. It was reasonable to say that the extreme fire manor should be declining slowly. However, the extreme fire manor had Ji-Wen, a master in the gang spirit realm, which was completely different. No matter how many resources and disciples in the spiritual pulse realm there were, they were far less than a master in the gang spirit realm. Now the extreme fire manor had one more master in the gang spirit realm than the bipolar stronghold, and Wan Xiaoyuan had killed Zhu Luan. Zhu Huarong would definitely not let it go. Once the extreme fire manor came, what should he do? Xiao Jingwu was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, thinking hard about the solution. At this time, the deputy chief of the bipolar stronghold, Hao Yushan, who was in the gang spirit realm, said, "Don't worry, chief. According to the intelligence, Xiaoyuan is not dead yet, nor has he fallen into the hands of the extreme fire manor. And I think Xiaoyuan is likely to be used by someone. Although he doesn't have the ability to kill Zhu Luan, it is possible that someone secretly set him up. The urgent matter now is to take Xiaoyuan back and figure out the ins and outs of the matter." "You are right. Xiaoyuan is near the Whitelong Valley. I'll take someone to pick him up." Xiao Jingwu was about to leave. "No, chief, you can't go." Hao Yushan continued. "If you show up, Zhu Huarong will also show up. By then, this matter will be completely blown out of proportion. It's better to send more disciples in the spiritual aperture realm and the spiritual pulse realm to pick up Xiaoyuan." "Okay, but you must send more elites to ensure Xiaoyuan's safety." Both the extreme fire manor and the bipolar stronghold took big actions and sent their masters to the Whitelong Valley. However, the more than 20 masters in the 4 realms of celestial beings sent by the bipolar stronghold were intercepted halfway. There were only a dozen people who intercepted them. These people were all masked and dressed in black, and they were all masters in the spiritual aperture realm. At the same time, Jiwon of the Extreme Fire Manor was rushing with a group of disciples. Suddenly he stopped abruptly. The disciple behind him asked, "Elder Ji, what's wrong?" Jiwon's eyes flashed with cold light, and he said in a cold voice, "Come out. What kind of hero are you hiding?" Swish, swish, swish. As soon as his voice fell, a dozen black shadows appeared in all directions. One of them chuckled and said, "Elder Ji is really a master in the gang spirit realm. You were discovered so quickly." This man was Lung Shiqi. Chapter 439. It was Lung Shiqi who had brought half of the masters of the elite club to kill the people of Extreme Fire Village. Except for Lian Yi. These people were all in the spirit aperture realm. There were more than 20 people in Extreme Fire Village, including 5 in the spirit aperture realm, a dozen in the spirit pulse realm, and Jiwon in the spirit gang realm. Without Jiwon, Lung Shiqi's side could completely crush Jihowo Village. But this master of gang spirit realm was like an unshakable mountain. Jiwon looked at Lung Shiqi and others, and was secretly surprised. When did so many spirit aperture realm masters appear near Saining City? It seems that the first elder is right. There is indeed a mastermind behind Zhu Lin's death. However, for him, these spirit aperture realm masters were nothing. He said coldly, "Who are you? Do you know what will happen to you if you stop me?" Lung Shiqi ignored Jiwon. He waved his hand, and the dozen people behind him immediately rushed out. Although they were fewer in number, their strength was far superior to the people of Extreme Fire Village. Jiwon was stopped by Lung Shiqi. Jiwon thought that Lung Shiqi was also a spirit cultivator in the spirit gang realm, but he found that Lung Shiqi was only in the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. He couldn't help laughing. "What? Do you want to stop me or do you want to die?" Lung Shiqi didn't answer. He directly pulled out the inky jade sword, and a ferocious bloody light suddenly burst out from the dark blade. A blood-colored sword light slashed out like a waterfall. Jiwon snorted coldly. Using his palm as a blade, he slashed out. In an instant, a crimson flame spiritual highland exploded. A dense flame burned the night sky, and directly tore apart Lung Shiqi's blood-colored sword light. "If you only have this bit of ability, then please go to hell," Jiwon said with a cold smile. Lung Shiqi carefully sensed the spiritual fluctuation of Jiwon's attack just now. He could feel that Jiwon could easily break the bloody sword light without using his full strength. It could be seen that Gang Spirit Realm was really powerful. However, since Lung Shiqi dared to stop Jiwon alone, he naturally had the confidence to do so. With a thought, a fist-sized 5-colored goo worm flew out. This was the Goo King that Lung Shiqi had been cultivating for a long time. Through his continuous feeding of experience pills and various rare resources, the Goo King had now evolved into a rank 4 monster beast. Furthermore, it also possessed various strange abilities. Then, Goo King released a 5-colored light that shrouded Lung Shiqi. In an instant, a set of 7-colored scale armor appeared on his body. The aura of Lung Shiqi's spiritual energy suddenly increased to the late stage of the spirit aperture realm. This was one of the Goo King's abilities after advancing to stage 4, armor transformation. The Goo King's transformation into armor not only allowed Lung Shiqi's spiritual energy to soar, but also allowed Lung Shiqi to use part of the Goo King's abilities. Lung Shiqi waved his sword again. The blood in his body boiled wildly, and the evil blood chi filled the sky. A sword light that was several times more powerful than before swept toward Jiwon. This time, Jiwon's expression was a little dignified. He held a short knife in his hand, and the red flame on it had almost condensed into a substance. Immediately, a huge flame knife surged out. The majestic and scorching aura made the other people who were fighting tremble and quickly retreat. Lung Shiqi, who was facing the flame knife, stretched out his left hand at this time, and mysterious green light sprinkled out. After these green lights met the flame knife, they constantly swallowed and melted the power in it. In an instant, the huge flame knife dissipated by more than half. The blood-colored sword light and the flame knife intertwined. Blood chi and flames exploded, and violent spiritual energy spread out, overturning the ground within a radius of dozens of feet. Ji-won's face immediately showed a bit of surprise. What method did the other party use to greatly weaken his flaming blade? Lung Shiqi used another ability of the Gu King, Devouring Soul. This was very similar to Princess Carol's Devouring Soul Gu. But the Gu King's ability was much stronger than the Devouring Soul Gu. After all, once the Devouring Soul Gu devoured too much spiritual energy, it would explode and die, but the Gu King wouldn't. Instead, it could devour a part of the spiritual energy for its own use. Taking advantage of this moment of surprise, a blood-colored jade mark appeared on Lung Shiqi's forehead. His face suddenly became a little pale, but the aura on his body was close to the peak of the spirit aperture realm. This wasn't the end. A terrifying evil blood chi surged out of his body and attached to the 7-colored scale armor and the black jade sword. It was the evil resisting art. At this moment, Lung Shiqi used all the enhancement methods he could accept for the magical beast blood pattern armor. The reason why he didn't use the magical beast blood pattern armor was that Lian Yi was here. He once wore the magical beast blood pattern armor in front of Lian Yi and pretended to be a demon spirit. In order not to be recognized, he couldn't use it at this time. Lung Shiqi's sword style changed, and hundreds of 3-ju sword chi sprayed out like a torrential rain, crisscrossing and covering the night. Ji-won didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. His blazing blade aura rolled back and slashed out, and the blade light of more than 10 feet fell down. Immediately, pieces of blade aura burst up, shattering the 3-ju sword chi one after another. Lung Shiqi's series of changes immediately attracted everyone's attention, and the people on his side were surprised and happy. Before coming here, Lung Shiqi said that if there were masters of the spirit aperture realm, he would hold them back. At that time, no one believed him at all and thought he was bragging. However, Lung Shiqi had fought with cultivators of the spirit aperture realm twice in a row, and he was not injured. Especially at this moment, he showed a strong foundation of strength. It seemed that he could really fight with cultivators of the spirit aperture realm. On the other hand, the disciples of the extreme fire manor were in despair. They were defeated by Dongfeng Qi, Bu Yangqiu and the others in one blow. They had only fought for a short while, but they had already lost 3 or 4 people. Their biggest hope was Ji-won. As long as Ji-won could kill Lung Shiqi and free his hands, they had nothing to be afraid of. But now it seemed that Ji-won couldn't kill Lung Shiqi in a short time. So what awaited these disciples of the extreme fire village was only death. In fact, Ji-won was the most shocked. So far he had fought with Lung Shiqi 3 times, but Lung Shiqi's 3 moves were stronger than the previous one, and they were several times stronger. Lung Shiqi was so powerful that Ji-won had to face this battle with the eyes of the same level. Ji-won clenched the hilt of his saber, and the blazing blade aura, which was as red as blood, flickered with a bit of black gold, which looked a little strange. Unconsciously, even the temperature in the surrounding air became abnormally dry. He moved his body, and in an instant, the fire soared into the sky and tore the night sky. The surrounding area was filled with dazzling flames. The dozens of people fighting on the other side didn't even care about their opponents and hurriedly retreated. But Lung Shiqi stood still. Chapter 440. Facing the monstrous blazing spirit gang that swept towards him, Lung Shiqi formed a seal with both hands, and a palm print of several feet in size appeared. There was 1 yin and 1 yang in the palm print, the extreme yang through the heavens, and the extreme yin through the underworld. Extreme yang underworld palm print. These 2 completely opposite forces actually perfectly fused together in Lung Shiqi's hands. Not only were the 2 forces fusing, but they were also destroying the other forces around them. Ji-won's terrifying blazing spirit gang instantly began to distort. If those blazing blade auras were like the surface of a lake, then Lung Shiqi's extreme yang underworld palm print was like a large stone smashed into the lake, stirring up the entire surface of the lake. When all the blazing blade auras dissipated, Lung Shiqi only took a few steps back. Ji-won's expression sank, and he waved his blade again. Like a hidden dragon soaring into the sky, the blade light was resplendent. The demonic aura around Lung Shiqi continued to rise, and the surging demonic aura could be seen clearly in the dark night. There seemed to be a demonic dragon churning in the demonic aura, and a pair of ferocious demonic dragon claws reached down and grabbed the resplendent blade light. Demonic dragon claw. After Leng Shiqi cultivated the Imperial Fiend art, the power of this move became stronger, and it could be ranked among the top of all his unique skills. One demonic dragon claw was destroyed by the blade light in 2 or 3 breaths, but the second demonic dragon claw finally blocked the blade. Ji Wen's 2 consecutive moves were blocked by Leng Shiqi, and he was not injured at all. He even seemed to be at ease, which made Ji Wen shocked, angry, and hateful. But this time, Leng Shiqi made the first move. He stretched out his 10 fingers, and 10 streaks of blood like thunder flashed past in the blink of an eye. Thunder exploded, and blood flashed. Each streak of blood was the thunder blood heavenly finger. Ji Wen was about to wave his blade, but at this moment he was surprised to find that a muddy swamp had appeared under his feet. This strange swamp was covered with cobwebs, and the threads were intertwined, making him a little scared. Ji Wen snorted coldly, and his spiritual highland erupted. In the blink of an eye, the spider web swamp was blown away. But at the same time, the 10 thunderclap blood heavenly fingers had already shot in front of him. He took a step forward, and flames surrounded his body. It was as if the god of fire had descended. The surrounding ground was incinerated, turning into scorched earth. Those raging flames condensed into pillars of fire, colliding with the thunderclap blood heavenly finger. The bloodline collided with the raging flames, causing a thunderous explosion in the night sky. Countless pieces of gravel flew everywhere, but they were all crushed into fine powder by the powerful force. When all the light dissipated, Ji Wen's eyes narrowed slightly because he did not see Leng Shiqi's figure. Ji Wen held his breath. Leng Shiqi's trickiness had completely exceeded his understanding. At this time, a sense of danger appeared in his heart. He suddenly sensed a wave of spirit power coming from the sky. He quickly looked up and saw Leng Shiqi, who was covered in a variety of spirit lights, floating in the air. On Leng Shiqi's back, there was a pair of 5-colored wings that were more than 10 feet long. This pair of wings was the flying ability that the Goo King evolved after devouring the soaring sky goo. Leng Shiqi looked down from above, and layers of formations of different colors and shapes appeared behind him. Looking carefully, there were exactly 5 different formations superimposed together, and bursts of heart-palpitating spirit power were emitted. Ji Wen's brows furrowed deeply. Leng Shiqi was actually a spirit caster. It was not that he had never fought with a spirit caster before. He also knew that if he wanted to defeat a spirit caster, he had to fight in close combat before the other party released a powerful spirit skill. But Leng Shiqi was floating high in the sky at this moment, making him a little helpless. Although Ji Wen also had many long-range methods, he was still lacking compared to a spirit caster, and it would consume a lot of his spirit power. So Ji Wen decided to defend and wait for an attack. Leng Shiqi stood in the air like a god. The wings behind him stretched out, and the formation flashed. He waved his hands, and the formation behind him continued to rotate. The 5 formations immediately shot out streams of light of different colors. Those streams of light were like a brilliant meteor shower. The streams of light of different colors contained different powers, and the most powerful of them were the streams of light of red and blue. The streams of light of red and blue contained both the power of red flames and frost. This move was originally the spirit skill rotating light stream formation that came with the 5-god flowing light secret art. Later, Leng Shiqi integrated the fire and ice tornado into it, and it became the current rotating fire and ice stream formation. The streams of light fell from the sky, and Ji Wen was instantly drowned in it. But Ji Wen's expression calmed down again. He held the long sword horizontally in front of him, and a shocking sword intent filled the air. Under the guidance of the aura, the countless streams of light that fell 10 feet away from him were annihilated into nothingness. Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't expect the rotating fire and ice stream formation to suppress Ji Wen, but the most powerful part of this move wasn't its explosive power, but its ability to continue. As long as you had enough spirit power, you could maintain the rotating fire and ice stream formation. So this dazzling meteor shower didn't stop, which shocked Ji Wen. Originally, he thought that Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only at the spirit aperture realm. Even if his cultivation was increased, his essence wouldn't change, and it couldn't be maintained for a long time. But as time gradually passed, Jiwon found that Lung Shiqi's aura was still very stable, and there were no signs of excessive spirit power consumption. However, Jiwon himself couldn't hold on any longer. Although he didn't use a lot of spirit power, and only used his own sword intent to defend against the enemy, this consumed a lot of his mind. If this continued, although he wouldn't be injured, his combat power would seriously decrease. He couldn't be so passive anymore. Jiwon waved his sword, and the red flames on his body flowed. There was no killing intent in his sword momentum, but it carried a powerful sword intent that could destroy the world. This was the strongest sword move he had comprehended since he advanced to the Spirit Aperture realm. But this move also consumed a lot of spirit power, and he didn't want to use it casually. Even he didn't expect that this move would be used on a person at the Spirit Aperture realm. Jiwon was also very confident that this move was enough to break all the formations, and could also seriously injure Lung Shiqi. Sure enough, things were as he expected. This move was like cutting tofu, easily breaking the streams of light and the 5 formations, including Lung Shiqi. Seeing this scene, Jiwon first smiled slightly, but the smile on his face immediately froze. This was because the formation in the sky and Lung Shiqi's figure had dissipated like illusions, turning into multicolored glazed flowers that floated down. Confusion appeared in Jiwon's eyes in an instant. At this moment, the flowers in the air suddenly bloomed, and countless petals drifted away. However, every single petal contained a strand of Tridemi's sword chi. Chapter 441. Thousands of Sanju sword chi scattered down, forming a boundless sword prison. There were real and fake sword chi in these sword chi. Like a dream, it was impossible to guard against. When the sword chi approached him, Jiwon suddenly bit the tip of his tongue to wake up. Then there was a hint of horror in his eyes. He had just seen the power of Sanju sword chi, but now there were thousands of sword chi. As far as he knew, even a sword cultivator of Spirit Gang realm might not be able to wave so many sword chi in an instant. How could this not shock him? In the face of this dense sword chi, Jiwon was about to make a move, but at this time he found that hundreds of Lung Shiqi had appeared strangely around him. These Lung Shiqi slashed out ferocious bloody sword light one after another, forming a sword net that trapped Jiwon in it. The sword chi in the sky and the scarlet sword net on the side made Jiwon a little bit unprepared. If he was still a little shocked just now, then at this moment he could only say that he was in disbelief. It was hard for him to imagine that this was a sword skill that a spirit cultivator of Spirit Aperture realm could display. Jiwon's face was fierce, and the long saber in his hand roared angrily, setting off layers of blazing saber aura that shattered the sword chi and sword light. He actually wanted to break the skill with force. However, the Lung Shiqi's chaotic flowers' gradually dazzling eyes was too strong, and the sword chi and sword light were overflowing, mixed with illusions. Under the cover of this sword prison, the long saber in Jiwon's hand actually had cracks. His spirit saber was also a 6th level spirit weapon, but the Lung Shiqi's inky jade sword was even sharper. Under the storm-like attack, it seemed to be about to shatter Jiwon's weapon. Jiwon suddenly roared angrily. Crimson flames surged around his body. The raging flames continuously condensed into several crimson runes that were imprinted on his body. Then Jiwon's whole body emitted red light, and even his eyes shot out 2 5-foot-long flames. He used his palm as a saber, and the saber intent that wanted to destroy everything appeared again, and a shocking red flame saber light slashed out. The blade aura instantly defeated all the sword aura and sword energy. Even the phantoms of the Lung Shiqi were scattered. However, Jiwon did not relax at all because he still did not see Lung Shiqi. He panted heavily as his eyes swept across his surroundings. At the same time, he expanded his perception to the maximum, and finally detected a trace of abnormality. That strange movement came from underground. Suddenly, the ground under Jiwon's feet began to crack, and bursts of green light shot out like the sun. Immediately, the Lung Shiqi rose from the ground with the poisonous sun in his hand and fiercely blasted Jiwon's body. As Jiwon had just unleashed his power, he was still a little weak. He was caught off guard and was hit by the shining sun poisonous yang palm. He could only raise his red flame spiritual gang to offset a part of the palm power, but he was still sent flying. At the same time, the poisonous flames entered his body, causing Jiwon to raise his head and spit out a mouthful of blood. He hurriedly mobilized his spiritual power to suppress the poisonous flames. Everyone who saw this scene was stunned. They didn't even care about their opponents. They all looked at Leng Shiqi in disbelief, especially Dong Fangqi, Bu Yangqiu and others. They thought that it was shocking enough that Leng Shiqi could stall Jiwon, but now he could even hurt a master of the Spirit Gang realm. Those people from the Extreme Fire Manor were even more ashen-faced. They were already at a great disadvantage, and all their hopes were pinned on Jiwon. However, Jiwon was no match for a spirit cultivator of the Spirit Aperture realm. This surprised them, and made them even more worried about their own lives. However, Leng Shiqi did not just want to hurt Jiwon. He put away the black jade sword and raised the devil arrival battle saber in his hand. Pure demonic aura surged with ferocious chi. At this moment, all his spiritual power and strength were gathered on the devil arrival battle saber. Jiwon keenly felt the strong murderous intent on Leng Shiqi. At this moment, he really felt the threat of death from the bottom of his heart. An idea that should not have appeared in his mind, and that was escape. A master of the Spirit Gang realm had to escape from a spirit cultivator of the Spirit Aperture realm. This was the biggest joke in the world. However, Jiwon did not care about his face at all. He cared more about his own life. Although he himself did not believe that Leng Shiqi could kill him, he remembered that when he almost died in the hands of a demon beast, he also felt the same. Even if he was wrong, he would be punished when he returned to the sect. Moreover, now it seemed that even if he could kill Leng Shiqi, the other disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor would all die. He could not escape anyway, so he might as well leave. Unfortunately, just as he was about to escape, Leng Shiqi moved. Leng Shiqi suddenly swung his saber. When the saber slashed out, the surrounding space seemed to be frozen. Everything around him turned grayish-white. There was only a flash of saber light with various colors. This saber light seemed to split the sky and earth, cutting the gray space in half. Jiwon's body was about to be cut in half, but at this time, his body suddenly bloomed with a dazzling bloody light. At the same time, the jade pendant at his waist shattered, and a deep red flame emerged to protect him. This was Jiwon burning all the chi and blood in his body in a hurry, and he used his life-saving trump card. However, these things all returned to nothingness under that slash and were completely annihilated. Fortunately, Jiwon had finally left the gray-white space. He looked at the hideous and terrifying huge wound in front of him. Just a moment ago, he had almost been cut in half. Just as he was rejoicing that he survived, an invisible blade suddenly rushed into his brain, strangling his spirit and consciousness. Jiwon held his head and wailed in pain. At this moment, Leng Shiqi quietly appeared beside him, and easily chopped off his head with a swing of his sword. At this moment, all the buffs on Leng Shiqi had long faded, and his face was extremely pale, but his eyes were frighteningly bright. Especially when he held Jiwon's head in his hand, it scared everyone out of their wits. The disciples of Extreme Volcano Village only felt a roar in their heads, as if the sky had collapsed, and their vision turned black. Jiwon was dead? This Spirit Astral Realm expert was dead? And he died in the hands of a Spirit Aperture Realm expert. This was too absurd, and it was to the extent that they thought they were dreaming. Unfortunately, this was the truth. These people were stunned, but Dong Fangqi and the others were not. Although they were also shocked by Leng Shiqi's terrifying strength, they could not believe that Leng Shiqi could kill Jiwon. However, they were all elites with real power, so they quickly reacted and killed the disciples of Extreme Volcano Village one by one. Chapter 442. Rumble. Only a moment later, there was only one person left in the group of people from the Extreme Fire Village. He should have been dead for sure. However, there was an extremely powerful treasure on him that released explosive flames. The power in it was extremely powerful. Leng Shiqi and the others could only retreat. The person took advantage of the chaos to escape. However, when he ran a few feet away, hundreds of cold underworld threads entangled him. Extreme cold ice silk hands? You are from the bipolar mountain village. The person immediately shouted in shock and anger. Unfortunately, Most of the cold underworld threads were melted by the terrifying flames when they passed through the sea of fire. They did not stop the person. The disciple of the extreme fire village was pleasantly surprised again, and fled in a hurry. Dong Fangqi walked to the side of Leng Shiqi. At this moment, the way he looked at Leng Shiqi had completely changed. If he was not convinced of Leng Shiqi before, that thought had completely disappeared now. He even wanted to curry favor with Leng Shiqi. He was only at the 5th level of the spirit aperture realm, but he could kill a master of the gang spirit realm. He could no longer be described as a genius. He was clearly abnormal. Such a person would definitely soar to the sky in the future. If he could please Leng Shiqi now, it would be of great benefit to Dong Fangqi in the future. Therefore, Dong Fangqi said with a smile, "Brother Lu is not only powerful but also wise. From the beginning, you have played the 2 second-class sects in the palm of your hand. I admire you." Bu Yangqiu also walked over and said, "Yes, Brother Lu's clever trick made the people of the Extreme Fire Village and the Bipolar Mountain Village fight. It gave us a great opportunity. Now Brother Lu deliberately let the disciple of the Extreme Fire Village go. He wanted him to go back and report, so that the conflict between the two sides will be more intense. As long as they fight to the death, the destruction of the Extreme Fire Village will be close at hand." The others also came up and complimented him. Now Leng Shiqi had completely conquered these arrogant geniuses in terms of strategy and strength. Of course, they had no choice but to accept it. The record of killing a master of Gang Spirit Realm was too frightening. Among these people, only Lian Yi didn't say much. Instead, her beautiful eyes were fixed on Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi casually waved his hand and said, "You're flattering me. There's still a long way to go before we can complete the mission. Let's hurry up and meet up with Di Chuan." When everyone gathered together, Leng Shiqi knew that Di Chuan's plan was going very smoothly. Their battle prowess was completely overwhelming. Moreover, one of them had specially imitated the sword technique of the extreme fire manner, and let the messenger go back. It was worth mentioning that the Delta Origi had performed exceptionally well during the battle. Not only did she fight 1 against 2, she even killed 2 spirit aperture stage early stage spirit cultivators. This battle record shocked Di Chuan and the others. However, when Di Chuan and the Delta Origi learned that Leng Shiqi had killed Ji1 of Gang Spirit Realm, they were all dumbfounded. Although each of them had experienced great storms and had heard of the spirit aperture stage killing Gang Spirit Realm cultivators, it was only by chance that Ji1 of Gang Spirit Realm. However, such a situation could only be achieved by someone at the peak of the spirit aperture realm by coincidence. However, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only at the 5th layer of the spirit aperture realm. It was too terrifying to be able to kill a Gang Spirit Realm cultivator at the 5th level of the spirit aperture stage. Among them, Di Chuan's expression was the most strange. Only now did he know that when he fought with Leng Shiqi, the other party didn't use much strength at all. Otherwise, he was likely to be killed on the spot by Leng Shiqi. Delta Origi's eyes flashed with surprise. In fact, she was even more surprised. Her master, Bone Demon, had once explained to her the characteristics of each of the 4 realms of celestial being. Spirit cultivators of Gang Spirit Realm were actually qualified to touch a little bit of the power of heaven and earth. They use spiritual power as the foundation and external power as the supplement to steal a trace of the power of heaven and earth to condense Gang Spirit. Therefore, the fighting power of Gang Spirit Realm experts was very amazing. Not to mention other things, just Gang Spirit alone could crush spirit cultivators at the late stage of the spirit aperture stage. However, Leng Shiqi could cross several small realms and a big realm in a row and kill a Gang Spirit Realm expert. If Leng Shiqi could stall Ji1, Delta Origi could accept it in her heart, but Leng Shiqi's strength was far beyond her expectations. Therefore, at this moment, Delta Origi's hands hidden in her sleeves clenched tightly into fists. She thought to herself, "I can't catch up with him after all." Leng Shiqi looked around and saw that there were no casualties, but a few people were injured. Finally, he looked at Delta Origi again. He knew that Delta Origi's strong character was up again. He could only smile bitterly and then asked, "By the way, how is Wan Xiaoyuan?" Di Chuan answered first, "We have quietly killed him on our way back." Hearing that, Leng Shiqi nodded. "Okay, I'll go to the bipolar mountain village first. Now that Jihuashan village has lost Ji1, a master of Gang spirit realm, its battle strength has been greatly reduced. It's easy to persuade them to attack Jihuashan village. What we need to do is to use the power of the bipolar mountain village to destroy Ji1. As long as they destroyed Ji1, their mission would be completed. The others were also half happy and half worried when they heard this. It had only been about a month since they came to Saining City. If the plan went well, they would soon complete the mission. This speed was really fast. However, their test was not only to complete the mission, but also to see their personal performance. The mission was completed too fast. Some of them had not had time to show off before it was over, which made them a little worried. Among this group of people, Leng Shiqi, Dichuan, Dong Fangqi, Buyangqiu and others all agreed that they could pass the test. Even Delta Origi had a great chance. After all, she had made great achievements. Therefore, they could only hope that they would be able to contribute more in the final battle and accumulate more merits. After discussing with the others, Leng Shiqi divided into two groups and went to the bipolar mountain village alone. The others all went to the vicinity of Jiwen and began to make the final preparations. Not long after, in Jiwen's house, Zhu Hurong directly overturned the table in front of him. Say that again. Zhu Hurong pointed at a person and roared with a faint flame all over his body. The person he pointed at was the one who was deliberately released by Leng Shiqi. He said tremblingly, "House Master, Elder Ji1 and other senior and junior brothers were killed. It was the people of Bipolar Mountain Village who did it. Although the leader hid his cultivation, he used ice silk hands. It can't be wrong. Xiao Jingwu, you destroyed my foundation. I'll kill you." When Zhu Hurong was about to go crazy, First Elder Heho came over. "House Master, you'd better think about what we should do if the Bipolar Mountain Village attacks us." Chapter 443. In the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold, Xiao Jingwu also received the news that all the experts in his sect had died. He also learned that Wan Xiaoyuan had died in Baichanggu. All of this was done by the Extreme Fire Village. Xiao Jingwu was both shocked and angry. Among the disciples he sent out, there were several Spirit Aperture Realm and a dozen Spirit Pulse Realm. These were the mainstays of the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold. With the death of these people, the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold could be said to have suffered a great loss. It would probably take more than 10 years to recover. And Wan Xiaoyuan's death had cut off the hope of the younger generation. Now not only was the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold short of manpower, but only Xiao Jingwu and the deputy chief, Hao Yushan, were left to support them. Xiao Jingwu couldn't wait to kill Zhu Hurong now, but he didn't dare. Instead he was worried, because the biggest advantage of the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold was that they had more Spirit Aperture Realm and Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators than the Extreme Fire Village. Now that more than 20 people had died, this advantage was gone. But the Extreme Fire Village had 3 Spirit Astral Realm experts. If the Extreme Fire Village attacked, he wasn't sure if he could withstand it. Hao Yushan also realized the seriousness of the matter and said, "Chief, should we go to the Discipline Commission to mediate?" The Discipline Commission always hoped that the territory under their jurisdiction would be peaceful. If the Extreme Fire Village made a big fuss, the Discipline Commission would definitely be unhappy. They might as well prepare some gifts and take the initiative to mediate. Although they would lose face, it was better than losing their lives. Xiao Jingwu was naturally unhappy. No, the Discipline Commission will definitely ask for an exorbitant price. Rather than that, it's better to go to the Tang family and the Tenju Wu. Besides, if the Extreme Fire Village wants to swallow us, aren't they afraid of breaking their teeth? I don't think they dare to fight to the death with us. Hao Yushan said worriedly, but even so, the Extreme Fire Village will take away a lot of resources. It won't be long before we are left far behind by the Extreme Fire Village. When you and I die, the mountain stronghold will inevitably be destroyed. Alas! Xiao Jingwu sighed deeply, as if he had aged a few years in an instant. I know what you said, but what can we do? We have no other choice but to endure. Hao Yushan was just about to say something when a voice suddenly sounded out. Fort Master Xiao, Forbearance can indeed temporarily alleviate the difficulties of the bipolar mountain stronghold, but blindly forbearance will only make the other party worse. Moreover, Fort Master Xiao shouldn't be thinking about compromising with the extreme fire manor, but how to destroy the extreme fire manor. Who is it? Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan's spiritual power surged violently, revealing a cold killing intent. There were still some spirit cultivators of the four realms of heaven and human in the bipolar mountain village. The two of them were masters of the spirit astral realm. This person could actually come here quietly. His strength could be imagined. A figure quietly appeared in front of them. It was Leng Shiqi. When Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan saw Leng Shiqi, they immediately felt that something was wrong. Originally, they thought that the person who could suddenly appear here should be at least in the gang spirit realm. But now the other party's aura was only in the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. Xiao Jingwu's killing intent became more blatant, but he didn't rush to make a move. Instead he asked, "Who are you? What's your purpose in sneaking into the bipolar mountain village? If you can't tell me why, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave." Hao Yushan also silently walked to the side of Leng Shiqi, and a gust of spiritual power enveloped him. Leng Shiqi said with a smile, "Fort Masters, you don't have to be so nervous. I'm actually here to give you gifts." Gifts? Gifts in this way? Of course, Xiao Jingwu didn't believe it. Leng Shiqi took out a mustard seed bag. Xiao Jingwu immediately made a vigilant action, and a strong spiritual pressure spread out. "This is my gift to the two Fort Masters. Please accept it." Leng Shiqi didn't care about Xiao Jingwu's action. He waved his hand, and suddenly more than 20 bloody heads scattered all over the ground with a strong smell of blood. Seeing these heads, even though Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan were both in the gang spirit realm and in high positions, they couldn't help but gasp. Because these heads were all from the disciples of Jihua Mountain Village. Because of the deep hatred between the two sides, they were also very familiar with the people of Jihua Mountain Village. At a glance, these heads were all from the disciples of Spiritual Pulse Realm and Spiritual Aperture Realm. Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "These people are the disciples of Jihua Mountain Village who intercepted and killed the bipolar mountain village on the way. Unfortunately, some of them are already dead and don't even have a complete head." Xiao Jingwu suppressed the horror in his heart. He suddenly thought of a question. "Are they really the ones who intercepted and killed my disciples? Are they really killed by you?" "Yes." "Nonsense!" Xiao Jingwu shouted angrily. "Not to mention that these people can't kill so many of my disciples. You don't have the ability to kill them either." Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "Don't be too decisive. These heads are just small gifts. I have a big gift here. Please take a look." After saying that, Leng Shiqi took out another head. It was Ji-Wen's head. Hao Yushan immediately exclaimed, "This is Ji-Wen? How is it possible?" Xiao Jingwu also stared. Seeing Ji-Wen's head here, they understood that if Ji-Wen had made a move, he could have killed many of their masters. However, the other party could actually kill Ji-Wen and a group of masters of Jihua Mountain Village. This showed that either the other party was terrifyingly powerful, or there was a group of powerful masters behind the other party. No matter which possibility it was, the other party was qualified to talk with them on an equal footing. At the same time, Xiao Jingwu keenly thought of one thing. That was, they did have the hope to destroy Jihua Mountain Village. More than a year ago, Jihua Mountain Village lost a large number of masters in the Phantom Spirit Secret Realm and the Demonic Beasts Rebellion. This was a good opportunity for Bipolar Mountain Village to rise. However, unexpectedly, Ji-Wen appeared out of nowhere and advanced to Gang Spirit Realm. He alone was equal to a group of Spiritual Aperture Realm and Spiritual Pulse Realm disciples. But now Ji-Wen was dead, and a large number of masters of Jihua Mountain Village were also dead. This meant that Jihua Mountain Village only had a few masters left. The reason why Xiao Jingwu wanted to compromise before was that he was not as strong as the other party. But now he found that Jihua Mountain Village was even weaker. So new and old hatred surged in his heart. He could not wait to take people to attack Jihua Mountain Village right now. However, at this time, Hao Yushan asked coldly, "Then who are you? Why are you here?" Chapter 444. Facing the question, Lung Shiqi took out his identity token and said harshly, "I'm Lu Xingji, the Great Supervisor of Dark Thunder Guards in Donglin County." Dark Thunder Guards. Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan looked at each other. Obviously, they didn't expect that the newcomer was from Dark Thunder Guards. They looked carefully at the token in Lung Shiqi's hand. It was indeed the Great Supervisor of Dark Thunder Guards. It couldn't be faked, and no one dared to do so. However, as a second-rate sect, Bipolar Village had to deal with Discipline Commission and Dark Thunder Guards. There were only a few great supervisors in Donglin County. How come they had never heard of Lu Xingji? Moreover, why did he help them? Lung Shiqi didn't lie to them. The token was real, but not completely real. If Xiao Jingwu saw the back of the token, he would find there were two small words, West Wilderness. He was using the sword of the previous dynasty to kill the official of the current dynasty. Xiao Jingwu withdrew his spiritual pressure and cupped his hands. "Your Excellency Lu, I'm curious. Why do you want to help me destroy Extreme Fire Village?" "Merit," Lung Shiqi said. "To tell you the truth, I've just been transferred here. As you can see, my cultivation is still in spiritual aperture realm. Some people don't like me. That's why I need a huge contribution to stabilize my position. Extreme Fire Manor's crimes are undeniable. Unfortunately, although I have some experts under me, it's still impossible for me to take down the Extreme Fire Manor. In addition, although Bipolar Village is now stronger than Extreme Fire Village, it's not easy for Master Xiao to bite this hard bone. Since neither of us can destroy Extreme Fire Village easily, why don't we join hands? It's a win-win situation." Speaking of this, Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan looked at each other. They were both tempted. Lung Shiqi led people to kill a large number of masters of Extreme Fire Village, including G1, a master in Gang Spirit Realm. As a result, the overall strength of Bipolar Village was higher than Extreme Fire Village. However, as Lung Shiqi said, it was not easy for them to destroy Extreme Fire Village. Even if they were to forcefully attack, they would also suffer heavy casualties. In this way, the gains would not make up for the losses. If Lung Shiqi and the power in his hands were added to the mix, the situation would be completely different. In their opinion, since Lung Shiqi could kill G1, it meant that there must be a master of Gang Spirit Realm behind him. At that time, as long as Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan delayed Zhu Huarong and He Ho, the others would slaughter the disciples of Extreme Fire Manor first, and then join forces to encircle Zhu Huarong. They would succeed. Lung Shiqi saw through their thoughts and continued. "The number of people I can use is not large, only a dozen or so, but these people are all at the Spirit Aperture Realm. More than 10 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. If that was the case, then this battle could be easily won." Lung Shiqi's words were like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Xiao Jingwu said directly, "Okay, I promise you." Hao Yushan gave Xiao Jingwu a subtle signal with his eyes, but Xiao Jingwu did not notice. He could only ask, "Sir Lu, forgive me for being a petty person and then a gentleman, but if we really manage to destroy the Extreme Fire Manor, what do you want?" He did not believe that Lung Shiqi only wanted a merit. Extreme Fire Village was a second-rate sect, and the resources it collected were shocking. Even if many of them had been stolen by demon beasts, those fixed resources could not be stolen. For example, spiritual veins, spiritual fields, and the extremely cold spiritual pond, etc. Lung Shiqi waved his hand and said, "I want all the resources that can be taken away by Extreme Fire Village." Hearing this, Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan both frowned. "Lord Lu's appetite is too big, isn't it?" Hao Yushan said with a slightly unhappy tone. "Our Bipolar Mountain Village is the main force in attacking Extreme Fire Village. After this battle, who knows how many of our disciples will die? Also, we will have to stop Zhu Huarong and He Ho. If Lord Lu wants all the resources, forgive me for being blunt, but there's no point in doing this deal." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi laughed in his heart. He had guessed that they would refuse, but the reason why he purposely asked for so much was because he wanted to completely change the topic to the distribution of benefits after the battle. In this way, it would be a tacit agreement that they would work together to destroy Extreme Fire Village. That was what he thought, but his face still darkened. "Fort Masters, as far as I know, There aren't many resources in the Supreme Fire Manor. Moreover, after this matter is over, all of Extreme Fire Village's territory, spiritual veins, businesses, and especially the resources of their disciples will be yours. This is a great benefit. If you two are so calculative about such small benefits, then I can leave immediately. I believe that Zhu Horong will welcome me. Leng Shiqi's last sentence shocked Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan. They immediately thought of a possibility, which was that Leng Shiqi needed a great contribution. If Leng Shiqi could choose to help them destroy Extreme Fire Village, then he could also do the opposite. As for whether the Bipolar Mountain Village had made a mistake or not, it was up to Leng Shiqi to decide. Are you threatening us? Hao Yushan said in a low voice. Leng Shiqi shook his head. I brought the heads of Extreme Fire Village's experts to see you too. This is already the greatest sincerity I can show. However, the two of you want to haggle over such a small amount of resources with me. This kind of vision and mindset is truly disappointing. Xiao Jingwu coughed dryly. Ahem, Lord Lu, please be patient. We'll do as you say. Next, let's discuss the specific plan. Plan. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows and asked, Master Xiao, do you know the approximate number of Spirit Aperture Realm experts in Extreme Fire Village? Xiao Jingwu picked up a few heads from the ground and piled them to the side. Apart from these people, there should only be 8 or 9 people left. Leng Shiqi smiled. 8 or 9 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. Then what's the point of planning? Just fight and be done with it. We have more than 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts on both sides. In front of absolute power, what's the point of scheming? Xiao Jingwu was stunned at first, then he laughed loudly. Brother Lu is right. When he said Brother Lu, Leng Shiqi knew that it was done. After Leng Shiqi left, Hao Yushan immediately said, Master, there's something wrong with this Lu Xingji. Xiao Jingwu replied, There's definitely something wrong with him, but our goal is the same. We both want to destroy Extreme Fire Village. When we attack Extreme Fire Village, we must be on guard against him. 2 days later, in Extreme Fire Village, Zhu Horong and He Ho were pacing back and forth in the hall. Especially Zhu Horong, who was sweating profusely. As the leader of a second-rate sect, he shouldn't be in such a state. However, he couldn't be blamed for this. After He Ho's reminder, he had indeed thought of the possibility that the Bipolar Mountain stronghold would attack the Extreme Fire Manor. After all, the hatred between them was too deep. Of course, they couldn't just sit and wait for death. Very quickly, they sent disciples to the nearby sects to ask for help, hoping that they could mediate. But until now, not a single person had returned. All the disciples that were sent out seemed to have disappeared into the sea. They lost contact with them, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The entire Extreme Fire Village seemed to be shrouded by a layer of dark clouds, pressuring people to the point that they couldn't breathe. He Ho deeply felt that Extreme Fire Village must have fallen into a huge conspiracy, but he couldn't figure it out at the moment. Suddenly, Zhu Horong slammed the table. I've had enough. Rather than waiting here blindly, why don't we just fight to the death with Xiao Jingwu? Chapter 445. But at this moment, a disciple of the Extreme Fire Village suddenly pushed open the door with a panicked expression. Zhu Horong couldn't help but scold. What are you doing in such a panic? Besides, we are having a meeting now. Who let you in? The disciple hurriedly said, Master Elder, it's not good. The people of the Bipolar Mountain Village are coming. Zhu Horong and He Ho were taken aback for a moment, and then a hint of panic appeared on their faces. How could they come so fast? However, Zhu Horong was the master of the village. Everyone could panic, but he couldn't. He waved his hand. Let's go out and have a look. At this moment, thousands of disciples of the Bipolar Mountain Village had gathered at the gate of the Extreme Fire Village. They all had a murderous look. Zhu Horong walked to the gate with a group of disciples. The moment he saw Xiao Jingwu, he shouted, Xiao Jingwu, you allowed your disciples to kill my son. I haven't taken revenge on you yet, but you dare to make trouble for me. Xiao Jingwu was also a man of few words. He said fiercely, cut the crap. There will be a battle between us sooner or later. Today either you die or I die. Kill. With a command, he clapped his hands. Boundless Extreme Cold Spiritual Gang directly smashed the gate of the Extreme Fire Village. Thousands of disciples immediately swarmed up with red eyes. Zhu Huarong never thought that Xiao Jingwu would start a fight without saying anything. Was he really not afraid of a life and death struggle? Who gave him the confidence? However, he didn't have time to think about it, because Xiao Jingwu had already charged at him. At the same time, Hao Yushan also went to He Ho. As soon as the four gang spirit realm experts fought, the surrounding thousands of feet was filled with exploding gang spirit. No one dared to take a step closer. The rest of the people were kings against kings and generals against generals. The battle of thousands of people started. In an instant, the sound of killing shook the sky and blood flowed everywhere. Among them, the most intense battle was the battle between the Spirit Aperture Realm experts on both sides. The Bipolar Mountain Village had 13 Spirit Aperture Realm experts, which was 5 more than the Extreme Fire Village. Therefore, they had a great advantage as soon as they fought. However, the Spirit Aperture Realm was still the Spirit Aperture Realm. Even though the Extreme Fire Manor was at a great disadvantage, it wouldn't be easy to kill them in a short period of time. However, at this moment, 14 figures had silently arrived on the battlefield. The people from the Extreme Fire Manor were caught in a bitter battle, and had no time to divert their attention. Thus, they didn't pay too much attention to them in the beginning. However, when the 14 people approached, they all erupted with powerful auras belonging to the Spirit Aperture Realm. Everyone from the Extreme Fire Manor turned pale with fright, but before they could react, more than 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts erupted with all their strength and killed all 8 Spirit Aperture Realm experts from the Extreme Fire Manor. The 14 people who suddenly appeared were naturally Lung Shiqi and the others. However, Lung Shiqi didn't bring everyone. Moreover, he only brought people at the mid and late stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm, including Di Chuan, Dong Fengqi, and the others. As for the remaining people, they had all gone to another place. The appearance of Lung Shiqi and the others instantly changed the situation of the battle. The Spirit Aperture Realm experts of the Extreme Fire Manor were all dead. The remaining Spirit Pulse Realm and low-level disciples could only be slaughtered. Of course, the scene of them killing the 8 Spirit Aperture Realm experts with lightning speed was also witnessed by others. For the disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor, they were all horrified. Some of them even began to run for their lives. Zhu Huarong was both shocked and furious. His eyes were bloodshot. He never expected that the Extreme Fire Manor would invite more than 10 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. No wonder Xiao Jingwu was so confident. However, where did Xiao Jingwu find so many experts? Zhu Huarong couldn't understand. At this moment he didn't want to think about it because he could see that the Extreme Fire Manor had already lost. Whether the 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts went to kill the low-level disciples or to surround and kill him, and He Ho, they were all destined to fail. Failure also meant death. The Extreme Fire Manor had been passed down for over 100 years. Hatefully, it was going to be destroyed in his hands today. Zhu Huarong's heart was filled with endless hatred. Right now he only wanted to kill Xiao Jingwu. Ha! Zhu Huarong suddenly roared. A scarlet cloud of fire suddenly appeared in the sky, causing the temperature of the entire Extreme Fire Manor to rise. Many low-level disciples were sweating profusely, and almost couldn't breathe. Suddenly, a pillar of fire descended from the cloud of fire. Zhu Huarong was bathed in it. His body was rapidly growing. His black hair turned fiery red and danced in the wind. His aura was already infinitely close to the unity of heaven and man realm. This was the most profound secret technique of the Extreme Fire Manor. It could allow Zhu Huarong's cultivation to increase explosively in a short period of time. However, the price was to burn his lifespan. In other words, he was squandering his life. Xiao Jingwu's expression was abnormally serious. Zhu Huarong's soaring killing intent was locked onto him. Zhu Huarong was going to fight with his life on the line, so he had to be careful. Moreover, Xiao Jingwu could also see that Zhu Huarong couldn't hold on for long in this state. He only needed to stall Zhu Huarong. Next, red and blue light intersected around Xiao Jingwu's body. The blazing flames and the cold frost intertwined, forming a mystical pattern. Two supreme power masters at the late stage of Gang's spirit realm were going all out. Seeing this, the Spirit Aperture Realm disciples of the Bipolar Mountain Village all wanted to help. Although there was a huge gap between their realms, they could still harass from the side as long as they worked together. However, Leng Shiqi said, both of them are ready to fight to the death. Once they start fighting, I'm afraid we'll be affected before we even get close to them. Moreover, there's no room for distraction in a fight between masters. If we rush forward rashly, not only will we be affected, but will also disturb Master Xiao. In addition, Zhu Huarong must have used some forbidden secret technique. As long as Master Xiao can stall him for a moment, Zhu Huarong will be defeated. We'd better get rid of the Spirit Aperture Realm disciples of the Extreme Fire Village as soon as possible. As long as they die, the foundation of the Extreme Fire Village will be completely destroyed. The people of the Bipolar Mountain Village thought for a while, and felt that what Leng Shiqi said was reasonable. So they all rushed to kill the other disciples of the Extreme Fire Village. Leng Shiqi smiled secretly. He didn't lie to anyone just now. He just avoided the important and dwell on the trivial. Zhu Huarong couldn't hold on for long, but his fighting capacity at this time was definitely much higher than Xiao Jingwu's. The most important thing was that the mentality of the two sides was different. Zhu Huarong was fighting with the determination to die, while Xiao Jingwu only wanted to stall. In this way, Xiao Jingwu was bound to lose. Of course, it was still very difficult for Zhu Huarong to kill Xiao Jingwu. After all, Xiao Jingwu was the head of a second-rate sect. He must have some life-saving trump cards. So in the end, both sides would suffer great losses. At that time, it would be the turn of the Spirit Aperture Realm disciples to fight. Chapter 446. The following battle was simple. A group of Spiritual Aperture Realm experts charged into the Spiritual Pulse Realm. It was like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep. As for the low-level disciples of Extreme Fire Village who were below the 4 realms of celestial being, they were all scared out of their wits and retreated in defeat. Meanwhile, the people of Bipolar Mountain Village went crazy. Both sides had accumulated grievances for a long time and hated each other to the core. Especially when Extreme Fire Village won the Extreme Cold Spirit Pool 3 times in a row. The disciples of Bipolar Mountain Village were furious. At this moment, they turned all their hatred and resentment into fighting strength. The more they fought, the fiercer they became. In just a moment, nearly half of the disciples of Extreme Fire Village were killed. Seeing this, Zhu Huarong became even crazier. He completely ignored his own defense and attacked Xiao Jingwu like a madman. Xiao Jingwu never fought with him head-on. He always blocked if he could and dodged if he couldn't. However, in Leng Shiqi's view, Xiao Jingwu was already struggling. If he didn't use some trump cards, he would probably be injured. Zhu Huarong suddenly pulled at the void with his hands. In an instant, he seemed to have torn the space apart. An irregular portal appeared in front of him. That portal faintly revealed a heart-palpitating power. He's expression suddenly changed. He seemed to have thought of something and shouted with grief and indignation, "Village Lord!" Xiao Jingwu was shrouded by the terrifying aura. His heart jumped. He didn't dare to hide his strength anymore. A saber and a sword appeared in his hands. The power of ice and fire surged around him. The two opposite attributes combined and twisted the universe. A trace of blood flowed out of Zhu Huarong's mouth inexplicably, but he also sneered. He roared. Immediately, a strange monster rushed out of the irregular portal. The monster was more than 10 feet tall, and was red all over. There was a pair of huge ferocious arms on its back. The monster's body shook slightly. Endless flames spread out and filled the entire Extreme Fire Village. Judging from the aura, this monster was comparable to a 6th-ranked demonic beast. It was comparable to the existence of unity of heaven and man. While Leng Shiqi was forced back by the flames, he was secretly glad that he didn't fight Zhu Huarong head-on. Although they were all in Gang's spirit realm, Jiwen and Zhu Huarong couldn't compare at all. If Leng Shiqi were to fight with Zhu Huarong, he would probably be thinking about how to escape within a few moves. As soon as the monster appeared, Zhu Huarong's aura began to rapidly wither. Obviously, he had paid a great price to summon this monster. Then Zhu Huarong made a hand seal, and the monster stared at Xiao Jingwu with its red eyes. At this time, Xiao Jingwu was holding a sword and a blade in his hand. The red and blue lights on his body were intertwined. He held his breath and didn't dare to be careless. Under Zhu Huarong's control, the monster opened its four arms, and flames soared into the sky. Even the world seemed to tremble. The monster charged toward Xiao Jingwu with a wave of fire. Xiao Jingwu's face also turned red, and he started to burn his qi and blood to resist. However, to everyone's surprise, the monster suddenly turned around halfway and attacked Hao Yushan. Since the beginning of the battle, Hao Yushan had been fighting with He Ho. However, the two of them were not as fierce as Zhu Huarong. They were both in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm, and their strength was well matched. The two of them also knew that they couldn't do anything to each other. Although He Ho wanted to get rid of Hao Yushan, he had no way to do so. Hao Yushan, on the other hand, was delaying He Ho with a smile. He also saw that his disciples had killed more than half of the people from Extreme Fire Manor. It wouldn't be long before Extreme Fire Manor was wiped out from Donglin County. But suddenly, the monster summoned by Zhu Huarong rushed at him, which made Hao Yushan turn pale with fright. The monster's strength was comparable to a rank 6 demonic beast. How could Hao Yushan resist it? What was more, he had no time to make any preparations in a hurry. At this time, He Ho suddenly took action. He swept his two swords, and the blazing sword gang came out, blocking all of Hao Yushan's retreat. Hao Yushan was suddenly filled with despair, but before he could use his trump card, he heard an earth-shattering sound. Then a burst of monstrous flames swept in all directions, making more than half of the whole Jihuashan village collapse in an instant. Lung Shiqi opened his supercilious eyes and looked at the center of the battle, where Hao Yushan's spiritual aura had disappeared. This also meant that Hao Yushan, the deputy chief of Bipolar Mountain Village, and a master of Gang Spirit Realm, had died. Zhu Huarong's situation was also very bad. At this moment, the spiritual energy and qi and blood in his body were almost exhausted. But he laughed loudly, ha ha ha. Xiao Jingwu, even if you can destroy Jihuashan village, so what? Before I die, I also take someone down with me. It's worth it, worth it. It turned out that Zhu Huarong knew that even if he used all his trump cards, he might not be able to kill Xiao Jingwu, so he targeted Hao Yushan from the beginning. The destruction of Jihuashan village was irreversible. Before he died, he could take Hao Yushan down with him, which could be regarded as breaking one of the front teeth of Bipolar Mountain Village. Xiao Jingwu was not injured at all, but his face was extremely pale. Today's matter was in the bag, but unexpectedly, Zhu Huarong risked his life to kill Hao Yushan. Hao Yushan was not only a master of Gang Spirit Realm, but also the think tank of Bipolar Mountain Village, Xiao Jingwu's right-hand man and his best friend. Just when he was so angry that he wanted to kill Zhu Huarong, Lung Shiqi's voice came. Chief Xiao, Zhu Huarong is stalling you. He Ho has run away. After this reminder, Xiao Jingwu found that He Ho, the first elder of Jihuashan village, had disappeared. He Ho was a master of Gang Spirit Realm. He must not be allowed to escape, or there would be endless troubles. If a master of Gang Spirit Realm, who bore the pain of the destruction of his family, really escaped, he would become a viper hiding in the dark all the time in the future. As long as the disciples of Bipolar Mountain Village dared to show up, they might be attacked by He Ho. But it was impossible for Bipolar Mountain Village to hide in the village forever, so He Ho could not be left alive. Xiao Jingwu waved his sword and saber, chopping out two dazzling ice and fire spiritual gang, one red and one blue, to kill Zhu Huarong. Immediately, he chased after He Ho without looking at him. Zhu Huarong had been exhausted and had no strength to resist at all. In the twinkling of an eye, he was annihilated by the ice and fire spiritual gang, and died without an intact body. Everyone thought that Zhu Huarong had died, and the disciples of Jihuashan village had lost their fighting spirit, leaving only the road of being slaughtered. But Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed. He looked around and finally looked at a direction below. He slightly raised the corner of his mouth and murmured, Zhu Huarong, you deserve to be the head of Jihuashan village. You even have such a method of faking your death. Unfortunately, you met me. Chapter 447. In the depths of the extreme volcano manor, there was a secret room. It was originally covered in formations and restrictions, but a part of it was damaged by the battle above. At this moment, a figure staggered into the secret room. His skin was lacerated, and there wasn't a single place that was intact. The blood that flowed out had also congealed into blood spots. He was the master of the extreme volcano manor, Zhu Horong. Everyone thought that he had been killed by Xiao Jingwu, but he had strangely appeared here. Zhu Horong dragged his heavily injured and broken body into the secret room. He formed seals with his hands to undo the restrictions and barriers. Finally, he arrived in front of a large door. However, this door was on the ground. In other words, this door led underground. Zhu Horong immediately took out a flame-shaped token and imprinted it on the door. The door immediately trembled and opened a crack. Immediately after, a red light shot out from the crack and illuminated the entire secret room. Zhu Horong's face also showed a bit of confusion. His expression immediately became hesitant, but in the end, he seemed to have made a decision and pulled the door open with all his might. Blazing flames spread out. Zhu Horong took a deep breath and jumped in. After he jumped in, Leng Shiqi's figure quietly appeared. He focused his gaze and looked down. He discovered that there was a sea of fire under the door. To be more precise, it was a sea of lava. At this moment, Leng Shiqi remembered that the extreme volcano manor was located on top of an extinct volcano. Could this be the depths of that volcano? Then why did Zhu Horong not choose to escape after faking his death, and instead came here? Leng Shiqi's eyes lit up. There must be something more precious than Zhu Horong's life down there. He couldn't help but rub his chin. Then his body lit up with spirit armor, and he also jumped down. After jumping down, Leng Shiqi first found a rock to stand on. The only thing he felt was heat. One had to know that Leng Shiqi was at the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. He was already immune to cold and heat. Even with the protection of his spiritual armor, he still felt the heat. One could imagine how high the temperature of the surrounding lava was. Leng Shiqi moved his spiritual power, and cold air gushed out. However, the cold air evaporated as soon as it appeared, but it made him feel better. He rolled his eyes and quickly found Zhu Horong's position. Then he followed her. The deeper Zhu Horong went, the higher the temperature became. Even the air was distorted by the heat. However, he seemed to have some kind of secret technique that allowed him to remain unaffected by the temperature. About a quarter of an hour later, Zhu Horong arrived at a small high platform. The platform was ice blue in color. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the entire platform was made of ice jade. A palm-sized golden flame floated at the top of the platform. In this extremely hot environment, this kind of ice jade was still intact. Clearly, this ice jade was a rare treasure. Zhu Horong secretly let out a sigh of relief when he arrived. He stared at the golden flames in infatuation and murmured, "Crimson gold earth dragon flames, only you can save me now. Only you can save the extreme fire manor." Leng Shiqi, who was following behind him, heard this and was shocked. He remembered that he had seen the name Pure Gold Earth Dragon Flame in an ancient book from 10,000 years ago in the illusory spirit secret realm. It was said that this world would give birth to some heavenly variants. The conditions for these heavenly variants to appear were extremely harsh. But once they were born, they would contain a portion of the world's power. Different types of heavenly variants would contain different amounts of world's power. They could be roughly divided into the 5 elements, 3 talents, yin and yang. Moreover, even if they were of the same type, different types of heavenly variants would be born in different environments. For example, the ice type included zero ice, hell ice, and so on. The pure gold earth dragon flame was one of the fire type heavenly variants. It was said that this strange flame could only be born in the depths of a volcano. However, the probability of this happening was extremely small. It had never appeared in the past 10,000 years. Who would have thought that the pure gold earth dragon flame would be born in the extinct volcano under the extreme fire manor? Leng Shiqi also recalled that the pure gold earth dragon flame naturally had a great restraining effect on evil spirits. It could be said that the moment the pure gold earth dragon flame appeared, all evil spirits would be forced to retreat. He also suddenly realized that Nine Leaf had said that there was a treasure in the extreme fire manor. Could it be that he was referring to the pure gold earth dragon flame? The more Leng Shiqi thought about it, the more likely it was. Nine Leaf had said that she couldn't even get close. It seemed that the pure gold earth dragon flame had some restraining effect on demonic beasts like Nine Leaf. He couldn't help but think, I really didn't expect a second-rate sect like the Extreme Fire Manor to hide such a treasure. If outsiders knew, the Extreme Fire Manor would have been destroyed long ago. I originally thought that Zhu Huarong had hidden some cultivation resources here. Now I've run into a heavenly variant. It seems that I'm really lucky. Zhu Huarong walked into the pure gold earth dragon flame with a complicated expression. The bipolar mountain village had invited so many experts from somewhere. Now the destruction of the Extreme Fire Manor had become a foregone conclusion. His heart was full of hatred, but he knew that it was impossible for him to take revenge alone with his cultivation at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Therefore, he didn't run away after faking his death. Instead, he chose to collect the pure gold earth dragon flame. Only by collecting the pure gold earth dragon flame could he break through to the realm of oneness of heaven and men with the help of the power of heaven and earth in it. Only then would he have the qualification, strength, and opportunity to take revenge. But how could the pure gold earth dragon flame be collected so easily? Actually, this item had already been discovered when the Extreme Fire Manor was founded. It was precisely because this volcano had produced the crimson gold earth dragon flame that it had absorbed all of its energy and became an extinct volcano. Therefore, although the pure gold earth dragon flame was only the size of a palm, the power it contained was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. For hundreds of years, the Extreme Fire Manor had been secretly studying how to collect the flame. However, they didn't succeed even though they had spent countless resources, and a large number of genius disciples had died. Zhu Huarong had also been making preparations. Without perfect preparation, he wouldn't dare to collect the pure gold earth dragon flame rashly. But now he couldn't hesitate anymore. He had to give it a try at the risk of his life. Then, Zhu Huarong took out a large number of materials from his mustard bracelet. More than 80% of them were ice-class materials. He used these materials to set up a simple formation around the pure gold earth dragon flame. Suddenly, the area within a radius of several feet became as cold as a 10,000-year-old ice cave. The pure gold earth dragon flame seemed to have dimmed a little. Zhu Huarong's face showed a hint of joy, but soon his expression froze, because a saber light inexplicably appeared in front of him. Chapter 448. Leng Shiqi held the devil's arrival saber, which was dripping with blood. It was the blood of a master in Gang Spirit Realm, the owner of Extreme Volcano Manor, Zhu Huarong. Zhu Huarong was already at the end of his strength, and he forcibly set up the formation, which made him almost unable to fight. However, Leng Shiqi still dared not to be careless. He directly used Divine Ephemeral Bloom to kill Zhu Huarong with all his strength. And in order to make sure that Zhu Huarong did not fake his death, Leng Shiqi specially waited until he absorbed the power of Zhu Huarong's remnant soul. Then he did not dare to delay for a moment. He had to collect the red gold earth dragon flame before the formation completely collapsed. Of course, he did not know how to collect the red gold earth dragon flame, nor did he intend to collect it seriously. Leng Shiqi was instantly covered with a set of ferocious black armor. And then the armor emitted colorful streamers. Gu King armor. After preparing these, Leng Shiqi directly reached out to grab the red gold earth dragon flame. However, as soon as he approached, the streamers on his palm twisted and collapsed. When he got closer, the demon beast blood pattern armor began to melt. Leng Shiqi immediately changed his face and hurriedly stopped. He furrowed his brows as his thoughts raced. He looked down at the demon beast blood pattern armor and the colorful scale armor of Gu King armor on his body, and suddenly patted his head. The red gold earth dragon flame is supposed to suppress the power of these demons. How could I use these special means? Then, he immediately removed the two spiritual armors, and his body flashed with golden Buddha light. At the same time, streaks of silver holy power condensed into a cloak behind him. These were the beast spirit battle patterns of the flower-pinching posture and the holy silver deer. The energy emitted by the two was also the power to suppress demons. After all, it was somewhat similar to the red gold earth dragon flame. This time, Leng Shiqi approached the red gold earth dragon flame again, and it was much easier than before. However, the extreme power of the crimson gold earth dragon flame was still too much for Leng Shiqi to handle. He made up his mind and ignored the palm, directly touching the crimson gold earth dragon flame. At that moment, Leng Shiqi felt an extreme pain coming from his palm. This was the most heart-wrenching pain he had ever felt in his life. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. However, he was still very calm in his heart. At that moment, with a single thought, the crimson gold earth dragon flame disappeared into thin air. Following which, Leng Shiqi looked at the crimson gold earth dragon flame sitting quietly in his bag, a smile appearing on his face. He raised his left hand shakily, only to find that his palm had been badly mutilated and charred black. His eyes could not help but be slightly shocked. His body was not weak, and just the strength of his body was comparable to a spirit pulse realm cultivator. However, his body was almost melted the moment it came into contact with the crimson gold earth dragon flame. This was under the suppression of the array, as well as the assimilation of the Buddhist light and holy power. Under normal circumstances, Leng Shiqi's entire body would have melted. The crimson gold earth dragon flame was actually so terrifying. However, the stronger it was, the happier Leng Shiqi was because the crimson gold earth dragon flame was already his. Although he could not refine the crimson gold earth dragon flame yet, he had a lot of time to study it in the future. Sooner or later he would be able to refine it. With the crimson gold earth dragon flame, Leng Shiqi did not care about the other cultivation resources of the extreme fire manor anymore. Of course, he would still take what he needed. After treating his wounds, Leng Shiqi picked up Zhu Huarong's storage bracelet and returned to the ground. At this time, the battle was already over. Other than a few disciples who escaped, everyone else from the extreme fire manor had died here. The bipolar stronghold also sent out a large number of people to hunt down the people who escaped. Everyone knew that the wildfire could not burn away the wildfire. After Leng Shiqi met up with a dozen other elites from the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guard, they went straight to the Extreme Fire Manor's treasure vault. They took out mustard seed bag after mustard seed bag, and kept taking out the cultivation resources in the treasure vault. Although this place had been destroyed by Nine Leaf once, the Extreme Fire Manor was still a second-rate sect that had been passed down for hundreds of years. Its foundation was not bad. Just the remaining resources were enough to make countless people jealous. Many disciples of the bipolar stronghold watched with red eyes as they took out the resources. They even secretly swallowed their saliva. Meanwhile, Leng Shiqi and the others were naturally overjoyed. Now that the Extreme Fire Manor had been destroyed, their mission could be considered complete. They had even earned so many resources for free. Even if they were to split them evenly in the end, it would still be a considerable amount of wealth. Right now, the only person that Leng Shiqi was a little worried about was He Ho. As long as He Ho was alive, the Extreme Fire Manor could still rise from the ashes. Fortunately, Xiao Jingwu came back not long later. He came back with He Ho's head. Leng Shiqi also looked at Xiao Jingwu a few more times. Although Xiao Jingwu's cultivation was a few levels higher than He Ho's, being able to successfully kill him meant that Xiao Jingwu's true strength was also very strong. Xiao Jingwu looked at the ruined Extreme Fire Manor and laughed loudly. He had fought with Zhu Huarong for decades, and in the end he still won. Leng Shiqi stepped forward and cupped his hands. Congratulations, Master Xiao. From now on, the bipolar stronghold's glory is just around the corner. Ha ha ha, this is all thanks to Lord Lu. Tonight, we must drink until we are drunk. This one appreciates Master Zhao's good intentions, Leng Shiqi tactfully declined. Unfortunately, this one still has official business to attend to, so it is inconvenient for me to disturb you. Xiao Jingwu was in high spirits, so he didn't mind. Leng Shiqi casually exchanged a few pleasantries with him before leaving. However, Xiao Jingwu didn't see that when Leng Shiqi left, he had a sinister smile on his face. On the other side, when the bipolar stronghold broke through the Extreme Fire Manor, 9 figures suddenly appeared in the stronghold. These people included Delta Origi and Lianyi. Most of them were at the early stage of the Spirit Aperture realm, so Leng Shiqi didn't let them participate in the direct battle. Instead, they secretly came here. The bipolar stronghold could be said to have sent out all of their forces to attack the extreme fire manor. Right now, the entire stronghold only had a few low-level disciples and a handful of Sky Realm experts left. Lian Yi smiled and said, "Brother Lu's appetite is quite big. Not only do you want to swallow the resources of the extreme fire manor, you even want to take everything from the bipolar stronghold. Unfortunately, we didn't participate in the direct battle, so I'm afraid we won't be able to get much merit." Delta Origi glanced at her and said, "Getting the resources of the bipolar stronghold will naturally be a great merit. However, there will definitely be formations in the treasury. This will be a bit troublesome." At this moment, a person walked out from the crowd. It was a middle-aged man with 2 long strands of beard. He stroked his beard and said, "Haha, this one's knowledge is shallow, but I do know a thing or two about formations. I can't say that I can break through all of the formations in the treasury, but I'm confident in breaking through half of them." Chapter 449. One day later, Xiao Jingwu returned to the bipolar mountain village with his men after dealing with everything in the Jihuo village. However, when he returned to the sect, he found something very strange. The disciples in the 4 realms of celestial being who stayed here didn't show up. They were specially left to guard the sect's treasure house. Now they didn't show up, which made Xiao Jingwu uneasy. He hurried to the treasure house with his men. When he opened the door of the treasure house, he was stunned instantly. As the leader of a second-class sect and a master in the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm, Xiao Jingwu showed such an expression. He didn't even lose his composure when facing Zhu Huarong, who was fighting desperately. Because at this moment, almost half of the formation and inhibition in the treasure house had been destroyed. There were several corpses lying on the ground, which were the corpses of the disciples who stayed in the treasure house. However, the treasury was already empty. Such a huge treasury had actually been emptied. Xiao Jingwu felt as if there was a thunderbolt in his mind, which made him a little confused for a while. The elders and disciples behind him were all dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they saw. This instantly extinguished their joy of wiping out the Jihuo village. Crack, crack, crack. Xiao Jingwu clenched his fists, making cracking sounds. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Who is it? Who is it?" Although he wiped out the Jihuo village, Hao Yushan died, and he didn't get any resources from the Jihuo village. It could be said that although he won this battle, what he won was only the potential for development and the future. He didn't get too many substantial resources. Now his property had been emptied by someone secretly. He couldn't even pay the monthly salary of his disciples. It was conceivable that there would be hostility within the sect for a period of time. This was not the point. The most important thing was that it might take him 10 or more years to accumulate so many resources again. This meant that the bipolar mountain village had regressed for more than 10 years. Now his bipolar stronghold only had a large territory, but couldn't even take out a single bit of resources. If this matter was known by other sects, they would definitely have other thoughts. At that time, they would fight for territory and business. In the end, the bipolar mountain fort was actually not as powerful as before they destroyed the extreme fire manor. Xiao Jingwu was filled with hatred and anger, but he didn't even know who he should hate. He could only rage helplessly. Investigate. Go and investigate. We must find out who did it. The culprits of this matter, Leng Shiqi and the others, had already gathered in Shining City. They were gathered in a dilapidated house. There were a total of 23 mustard seed bags on the table in the middle, which contained all kinds of resources from the extreme fire manor and the bipolar stronghold. Everyone's breathing was a little hurried and heavy. Anyone who saw so many resources would be moved. From time to time, everyone would look at one person, and that was Leng Shiqi. This time, not only did they successfully complete the mission, but they also obtained countless resources and wealth. And all of this was brought to them by Leng Shiqi. At the beginning of the mission, Leng Shiqi used the conflict between Zhu Lin and Wan Xiaoyuan to incite a war between the two sides. Then he killed the experts of both sides. Then he persuaded Xiao Jingwu to attack the extreme fire manor. He really displayed his scheming and strength to the fullest. More than 90% of the people present were sincerely convinced by him. So before Leng Shiqi said anything, they wouldn't rashly touch these resources. Leng Shiqi casually weighed the mustard seed bags. Among all the resources he had seen, this was the most abundant one except for the Gu God sect. He was also very tempted. These resources have been evenly distributed. There are a total of 23 mustard seed bags, one for each of you. However, everyone's needs may be different, so you can exchange with each other later. While speaking, Leng Shiqi casually picked up one of the mustard seed bags and stood to the side. The others looked at each other with a bit of astonishment in their eyes. They originally thought that Leng Shiqi would definitely monopolize the majority. After all, Leng Shiqi played a huge role, and they were all mentally prepared. But Leng Shiqi was willing to share the resources with everyone equally? This was all the wealth of a half-second-rate sect, and he was actually willing to give up most of it. Unconsciously, everyone felt some respect for him in their hearts. In the end, they didn't have much to do with Leng Shiqi. After this mission, some of them would be eliminated and return to their own provinces. Even if Dongfang Qi, Di Chuan, and the others could pass the test, they would disperse after the elite meeting. It was very likely that they would never see each other again in this life. So they felt that Leng Shiqi didn't need to rope them in now. Leng Shiqi was willing to share so many resources with them. It was completely righteous of him. Di Chuan was the first to cup his hands and say, "Brother Liu, your strength and ability were stronger than mine before, but to be honest, I was still a little unconvinced. But now I, Di Chuan, am truly convinced by Brother Liu. If you need me in the future, just let me know." Leng Shiqi chuckled and said, "Brother Di, you're too polite." After that, he picked up a mustard seed bag from the table and personally handed it to Di Chuan. After that, everyone said a few words before taking the mustard seed bag. It was unknown how many of these people were sincere and how many of them were faking it, but at this moment, Leng Shiqi's reputation was unprecedented. Among everyone, only Delta Origi could roughly guess Leng Shiqi's thoughts. Delta Origi could be said to know Leng Shiqi very well. He was definitely a guy who wouldn't act without benefits. How could he give away wealth so easily? She guessed that the reason why Leng Shiqi did this was actually to establish good karma. Some of the reasons might be because of the Blood Seed project, because she also understood that if the Blood Garment Pavilion wanted to make a comeback in the future, it would inevitably attract the attention of countless sections. When that time came, the people present might also be in high positions and could more or less provide some help. Even if they couldn't help with this favor, they wouldn't hit them when they were down. Giving these people 10% of the benefits before they really rose up was far more useful than giving them 100% of the benefits after they became famous. Leng Shiqi secretly glanced at Delta Origi, knowing that she must be guessing his thoughts. However, Delta Origi was only half right. In addition, Leng Shiqi intended to completely convince these people to trust him and prepare for the next mission. Although in the past, the elite meeting only had one round of test, this time was completely different. Moreover, Leng Shiqi also had a hunch that there might be follow-up missions this time. Chapter 450. The news that Jihuashan village, a second-rate sect, was destroyed soon became the most explosive topic in the whole Donglin County. In Donglin County, there was almost no sect being destroyed in the past few decades. However, after Feng Xiaomo came to Donglin County, there seemed to be a strange prelude. 2 third-rate sects, including Golden Wing Academy, were destroyed one after another. Later, the collapse of the Phantom Spirit secret land led to the tragic death of many spiritual pulse realm cultivators. Donglin County was in turmoil, and several third-rate forces disappeared from the world. However, until now, there had never been a case of a second-rate sect being annihilated. Jihuashan village became the first second-rate sect to be destroyed in Donglin County in decades. The bipolar mountain village, which destroyed Jihuashan village, did not act in a high-profile manner after the event. Instead, they kept a low profile, which was very strange. When the news reached the ears of Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha, the other 2 leaders of the task, they were both shocked. The task of the 2 men was to destroy the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Gang, respectively, and they also gained something. However, The biggest problem in front of them was how to deal with the masters of Gang's spirit realm, and how to ensure that all the low-level disciples were killed. Both Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha could completely crush the disciples of Gang's spirit realm and Gang's spirit realm in the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Gang. However, it was difficult for them to kill the masters of Gang's spirit realm. Even if they joined hands to kill the masters of Gang's spirit realm, they could win, but it was almost impossible to kill them. Moreover, every second-rate sect had a large number of low-level disciples. Those people were not pigs. They would not stand there and be killed. Some of them would definitely run away. If these two problems could not be solved, they would never be able to complete the task. When they were all badly battered by this matter, the news that Bipolar Mountain Village attacked Jiahuashan Village came. When they heard this, their first thought was that it was so fast. Leng Shiqi and others completed the task too fast. It had only been more than a month. That was to say, it only took him half of the time to destroy Jiahuashan Village. At the same time, Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha also guessed that Leng Shiqi had cleverly borrowed the power of the Bipolar Mountain stronghold to complete the mission. Wu Diao clicked his tongue and exclaimed, "Wonderful, wonderful. What a good plan to kill with a borrowed knife, driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. I really want to know how Lu Xingji did it." The person next to him said, "Brother Wu, is that Lu Xingji breaking the rules by borrowing the power of the Bipolar Mountain stronghold? Now it seems that although he has completed the mission, it doesn't necessarily count." "No." Wu Diao shook his head and said, "The rules don't allow us to use the forces behind us, and Lu Xingji came all the way from the Western Desolate Province. It's impossible for him to have anything to do with the bipolar stronghold. Moreover, they only said that we can't rely on our own backgrounds, but they didn't say that we can't work together. Lu Xingji's actions gave me an idea. Go and call everyone over. I have something important to discuss with them." "Okay, Brother Wu." On the other side, Zhuge Puha did the same thing. And in the governor's mansion of Donglin Town, Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao also got the information about this matter. At this moment, there was a third person in the hall of the governor's mansion. This person was the steward of the Wind Towers branch in Donglin Town, shopkeeper Jing. In fact, the information Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao got was not only about the destruction of the extreme volcano village, but also described in detail how Leng Shiqi started from the conflict between Zhu Lin and Wan Xiaoyuan, and gradually expanded the grudge between the two sides. In the end, it led the Bipolar Mountain stronghold to attack the extreme volcano village with all their strength. Even Leng Shiqi's direct killing of Ji Wan was clearly recorded. The information described in this information was 90% the same as what Leng Shiqi had experienced. The only thing not recorded in the information was Zhu Huarong's fake death and Leng Shiqi's secret acquisition of the red gold earth dragon flame. From this, it could be seen that the Wind Tower's ability to gather information was appalling. Lei Mayan put down the information, sighed softly, and said, he was able to kill the early stage of the Gang spirit realm at the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm, and he destroyed the extreme volcano village in just over a month. This Lu Xingji is really a talent with endless potential. The Dark Thunder Guards have picked up a good seedling. Eunuch Gao, who had always been cold and serious, also raised a few smiles. This boy is really good, but he still needs more training. Eunuch Gao is still so strict. So, which people in this group do you think can enter the next round? Lei Mayan asked with a smile. Eunuch Gao did not answer directly, but looked through the information again. Lei Mayan was not in a hurry, so she waited calmly. After a while, Eunuch Gao said, I have 7 candidates in mind. Princess, why don't you take a guess? Hearing this, Lei Mayan suddenly raised her eyebrows. This zombie-faced Eunuch Gao was joking with her? This was really strange. It seemed that he was really in a good mood. She rolled her eyes and smiled charmingly. What a coincidence. I also have 7 candidates here. Why don't we write down the names of these 7 people, and see if they are the same? Bring a pen and paper. Soon after, the two each took a piece of paper and exchanged it. When they saw the names written by each other, they looked at each other and smiled. Lei Mayan covered her mouth and smiled. Sure enough, great minds think alike. Just as they were talking, Donglin City's Lord Feng Luan walked in. He first bowed and said, "Sirs Lu Xingji and the others have returned. They came back quite quickly. Call them in according to the names on this list. As for the others, you can go back." Lei Mian picked up the paper and said. Feng Luan took it with both hands, then bowed and left. There were 23 people standing outside the hall, with Leng Shiqi leading the group. Feng Luan immediately said, "You are the first to complete the mission. First, I have to congratulate you. But you also know that completing the mission does not mean you can pass the test." Speaking of this, most of the people in the crowd held their breath. If they passed this time, they would definitely have a meteoric rise in the future. If they failed, they could only go back home. Feng Luan took out the paper, and everyone's eyes were immediately attracted. He coughed and said, "Leng Shiqi." Leng Shiqi stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Thank you, Lord." "Don't thank me. You fought for it yourself. The two sirs are waiting inside. You can go in first." Feng Luan looked at Leng Shiqi with appreciation. Everyone took it for granted that Leng Shiqi could pass the test. No one had any complaints. Feng Luan continued to read the names: Di Chuan, Dong Fengqi, Buyangqiu, Higawi, Yin Xiefeng, and Blood Moon. Chapter 451. Other than Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi, the rest of the 7 people that Feng Luan pointed out were all in the late stage of the spirit aperture realm. They naturally had no complaints about Leng Shiqi, but Delta Origi, who was only in the early stage of the spirit aperture realm, could also pass the test, which made them feel a little unfair. Although she had killed 2 early-stage spirit aperture realm opponents, which proved that she was not weak. But in the end, she was still in the early stage of the spirit aperture realm, and did not have a decisive performance in the entire mission. Why did she pass? The others felt unfair, but no one jumped out to question Feng Luan, because none of them were idiots. They knew that the decision was not made by Feng Luan, but by Eunuch Gao and Lei Mian. Since the two had made such a decision, of course, it was impossible to change it. And none of them dared to argue with Eunuch Gao or Lei Mian, unless they were crazy. Leng Shiqi roughly knew why Delta Origi was selected. Although everyone's mission was to destroy the extreme volcano village, taking all the resources of the bipolar mountain village was not a small contribution. Because of this, the bipolar mountain village was basically crippled. For a short period of time, they could only seek self-preservation, and could not come out to cause trouble. This time, the elites would be placed in Donglin County, and they even made a move against the spirit cultivator sections. This was a signal. It was a signal that the Thunderblaze dynasty wanted to completely control Donglin County in their hands. Anything that could suppress the spirit cultivator forces in Donglin County could be regarded as a contribution. And the matter of seizing the resources of the bipolar mountain village was led by Delta Origi, which was why she passed the test. Then Leng Shiqi, Delta Origi, and the rest of the 7 people stepped into the hall and saluted. "Greetings to Manager Gao, greetings to Enforcer Lei." "You guys very good," Lei Mian said. "We already know everything. The 7 of you have the most outstanding performance in this mission, so you can enter the next round." Next round? Hearing this, Dong Fengqi and the rest were stunned. Didn't they get to enter the dragon vein to cultivate after passing the test? Why was there a next round? Only Leng Shiqi secretly thought that his previous investment was right. What? Do you think that so many people are qualified to enter the dragon vein, just because they destroyed a mere extreme fire manor? Lei Mian sneered. However, she changed the topic. Of course, there are also rewards for passing the first round. Lei Mian gave Feng Luan a meaningful glance. He immediately stepped forward and took out 7 items. Each item was wrapped in a layer of faint spiritual light. Taking a closer look, there were spirit tools, cultivation methods, spirit skills, pills, materials, and so on. Furthermore, these items were all at the 6th grade. For a spirit aperture realm cultivator, there were very few people who could possess a 6th-level treasure. For example, in their group, only Leng Shiqi and Di Chuan had 6th-level spiritual tools. This was enough to make others envious. Feng Luan pointed to the 7 items and said, "These are your rewards. Choose according to the order of the list just now. Leng Shiqi, you are the first." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi took 2 steps forward. His gaze swept across the 7 items. He first eliminated materials and spirit tools. He had no use for materials now, and he didn't lack spirit tools. He still had to choose between cultivation methods and spirit skills. Regardless of whether it was a 6th level cultivation method or spirit skill, they were both precious resources that could only be encountered but not sought. Furthermore, these 2 resources were very important to Leng Shiqi. Spirit skills were, needless to say, they were the foundation of his existence. Cultivation methods were also something he urgently needed. Currently, the spirit apertures in his body were enough for him to directly cultivate to the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm. However, after that, there was still a long way to go. That was to open all 360 spirit apertures in his body. If he wanted to open the spirit apertures, he would need a lot of cultivation methods. Furthermore, they had to be at the 5th level at the very least. Therefore, he had to collect some cultivation methods above the 5th level in advance. The 6th level cultivation method in front of him, Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll, was very tempting to him, especially since he had absorbed the Wind and Thunder God's Luck Stone. There was still a lot of pure wind and thunder power in his body. Cultivating this cultivation method would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. The 6th level spirit skill Black Lotus Demonic Fist beside it was also very interesting. Generally speaking, fist techniques were mostly firm and fierce. However, this Black Lotus Demonic Fist did the opposite. With one punch, the Black Lotus Demonic Chi would enter the enemy's body. This Black Lotus Demonic Chi was extremely sinister. It could absorb the spirit chi in the body to strengthen itself. It was equivalent to a parasite. Moreover, it was very tough and difficult to get rid of. It could be said that once the Black Lotus Demonic Chi entered the body, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, regardless of whether it was Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll or Black Lotus Demonic Fist, Leng Shiqi wanted both. Therefore, he deliberately walked around these items a few times. He stood in front of the cultivation method and spirit skill for a little while, as if he was having a hard time making a choice. The others didn't rush him. In fact, Leng Shiqi had already secretly used his unlimited skill points to learn both cultivation methods and spirit skills. Only a child would make a choice. Then Leng Shiqi took away the elixir among the 7 items. Dichuan immediately sighed softly. Obviously, he wanted this elixir. This elixir was called Crystallization Elixir. It was a necessary elixir to break through to Gang's spirit realm from Spirit Aperture Realm. In the 4 realms of celestial being, to enter Spirit Pulse Realm, one had to upgrade his Sea of Chi to Spirit Sea. To enter Spirit Aperture Realm, one had to rotate his Spirit Sea to form spiritual spirals. If one wanted to break through to Gang's Spirit Realm, one of the necessary conditions was to condense spiritual spirals into spiritual crystals. That was to change the spirit chi in the body qualitatively, and condense it into a material object. However, it was easier said than done. Li Xianyang, the head of Xianyang sect, betrayed the whole sect in order to break through to Gang's spirit realm. He just wanted to get the Yuanshi aperture crystal to help him condense spiritual crystals. It could be seen how difficult this step was. The crystallization elixir could greatly improve the success rate of condensing spiritual crystals. It could be said that the value of this elixir was no less than that of the Yuanshi aperture crystal. As long as one had the crystallization elixir, one would be half a step into Gang's spirit realm. Of course, the crystallization elixir could only increase one's confidence. As for whether one could successfully condense spiritual crystals, it still depended on one's own ability. Dichuan was now at the 9th level of Spirit Aperture Realm. His next step was to condense spiritual crystals. Therefore, he hoped to get the crystallization elixir the most. Unfortunately, Leng Shiqi beat him to it. After choosing, Leng Shiqi also noticed Dichuan's strangeness. His eyes flashed slightly, and he stood aside. Then it was Dichuan's turn. However, what he wanted most was gone. The destructive wind scroll was not suitable for him. He also had a 6th level spiritual sword, so he took the Black Lotus Demon Fist in the end. The rest of the people also chose what they wanted in order. In the end, only the 6th level materials were left for Delta Origi. However, Delta Origi did not care. The 6th level materials were also valuable. it was good to exchange them for other things. Chapter 452. The few of them received their respective rewards. Overall, they were very satisfied. Coupled with the resources that they had previously received, this alone made them feel that this trip was not in vain. Lei Mayan stood up and said, "You 7 are all the pillars of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. In the future, you will be the pillars of the Thunderfire Dynasty. We will be loyal to the Thunderfire Dynasty with all our strength." Leng Shiqi and others shouted at the same time. "This time, you have successfully destroyed the Extreme Fire Village. Of course, this is not the only reward. There is another reward for each of you." Leng Shiqi and others were all looking forward to it. Lei Mayan paused deliberately and said, "That is an opportunity." They were stunned at first, but then they were all overjoyed. Except for Leng Shiqi, these people were all supervisors of the Dark Thunder Guards or commissioners of the Discipline Commission. When they broke through to the Gang Spirit Realm, they would have the opportunity to be promoted to the Great Supervisor or Great Commissioner. However, it was only an opportunity. After all, there must be more than one person who was qualified to be promoted. Besides, there were very few positions for the Great Supervisor or Great Commissioner. Some people could even sit in this position for decades until they retired. So even if they wanted to be promoted, they needed not only cultivation strength, but also opportunity. And Lei Mayan gave them this opportunity. For example, Di Chuan was very likely to be promoted to the Great Commissioner after he broke through to the Gang Spirit Realm. How could they not be happy? "Thank you, Lightning Executioner." Their voices were clearly more fervent than before. Lei Mayan chuckled and sat down again. Eunuch Gao continued, "The Extreme Fire Village has been destroyed. Then do you know why this sect was destroyed?" This was a problem that had been bothering Leng Shiqi and the others. If the Great Righteousness Sect and the Salt Gang had a close relationship with the Mountain Sea Sect, then the Thunderblaze Dynasty would be able to slowly pull out the fangs of the Mountain Sea Sect. But the Extreme Fire Village had nothing to do with the Mountain Sea Sect. Why was it on the blacklist of the Thunderfire Dynasty? They looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. Eunuch Gao sneered in a cold voice. "Humph, that's because the Extreme Fire Village was determined not to change. I won't hide it from you. Not long ago, a prince secretly contacted Extreme Fire Manor. So Extreme Fire Manor shouldn't exist anymore." After Eunuch Gao finished speaking, he did not say anything else. However, his words shocked Leng Shiqi and the others. Everyone who could stand here was a shrewd person. They instantly understood the meaning behind Eunuch Gao's words. The Extreme Fire Manor saw that the current emperor didn't have much time left, and decided to interfere in the succession. Leng Shiqi also felt that Zhu Huarong was being too whimsical. Perhaps he thought that this was an opportunity, but he neglected the fact that His Majesty was still alive. Based on the intelligence network of the Dark Thunder Guards, they had quickly found out that the Extreme Fire Manor was related to the prince, which was tantamount to ignoring the current emperor. If that was the case, the only outcome that awaited the Extreme Fire Manor was destruction. At the same time, Leng Shiqi suddenly remembered that when Feng Shaimo led them to destroy the Golden Wing Academy, someone seemed to have mentioned that the Golden Wing Academy had something to do with a certain prince. He couldn't help but think that the person who hired the Blood Garment Pavilion back then was most likely someone from the Thunderblaze Dynasty. Eunuch Gao's eyes suddenly became as sharp as an eagle's. His gaze swept across everyone, and everyone who was stared at felt a chill run down their spines. "Therefore, I hope that you won't meddle in other people's business. Do you understand?" Dong Fengqi and the others immediately nodded frantically, and secretly wiped off the cold sweat on their foreheads. Leng Shiqi also understood that Eunuch Gao's actions were to warn them not to get involved in the succession. Otherwise, they would end up like the Extreme Fire Manor. Eunuch Gao's concerns were reasonable. Although the people present did not hold high positions, each of them had unlimited potential. The current emperor could at least hold on for a few more years. After a few years, these people could completely grow into the core power of the Thunderblaze Dynasty. They were definitely worthy of being roped in by the various princes. Since you all understand, I can rest assured. Eunuch Gao then closed his eyes and seemed to be overwhelmed by sleepiness. Feng Luan spoke in a timely manner. You all completed the mission very quickly. Therefore, you have to wait for the other two groups to complete their missions before you can proceed to the next round. During this period of time, you can rest assured and stay in the city lord's mansion. Speaking up to here, Feng Luan looked at Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao who were sitting high up. Seeing that they had no intention of speaking, he sent Leng Shiqi and the others away. However, just as Leng Shiqi was about to walk out of the hall, Eunuch Gao's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. I will come and find you at midnight. Leng Shiqi was secretly shocked. Thoughts flashed through his mind one after another, but he couldn't figure out why Eunuch Gao would come and find him. However, he had already made contributions, so no matter what, it shouldn't be a bad thing. After Leng Shiqi parted with the others, he decided to take advantage of the fact that it was still early to sort out the resources he had on him. He had obtained a lot of resources from the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold. Even if it was divided equally among more than 20 people, it was still equivalent to the lifetime wealth of an ordinary Spirit Aperture Realm cultivator. He first sold all the resources that he didn't need to the system, and received more than 2,000 system coins. Including his original one, he already had more than 5,000 points. At first, before Leng Shiqi came to Donglin County, he had specially prepared 3,000 system coins for emergencies. Unfortunately, he hadn't used them yet. At this time, the system coins had increased by a lot, which made him want to draw a lottery. However, he still held back. Instead of relying on his luck, it was better to do something practical. For example, buy some experience pills for the Gu King. In the battle between Leng Shiqi and Ji1, he had also deeply experienced the strength of the Gu King, so he wanted to cultivate the Gu King as soon as possible. And experience pills were the fastest and most convenient way. Then Leng Shiqi opened the interface of the shop and chose the intermediate experience pills that were worth 300 system coins each. He directly bought 7 of them. Leng Shiqi's system coins instantly returned to more than 3,000, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of heartache. Instead, he summoned the Gu King and threw it an experience pill. The Gu King immediately flew around Leng Shiqi twice happily. Then, Leng Shiqi continued to sort out his resources. Of course, the most precious ones were the cultivation methods and spiritual skills. It was a pity that whether it was the cultivation methods or spiritual skills, the highest level was only the 4th level. The higher level ones should be in the minds of Zhu Huarong and Xiao Jingwu. Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't refuse them all and learned them all. This time, the spiritual skill library was expanded a lot, giving him more possibilities. In addition, the most precious ones were the awakening pills. Leng Shiqi had been in the 5th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm for a while. Now that he had settled down, he had plans to break through. He estimated that as long as he refined 3 awakening pills, it would be enough for him to break through to the 6th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm. Chapter 453. Leng Shiqi raised his head and swallowed an Acupore's awakening pill. Then he began cultivating. It wasn't until midnight that Leng Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. Not far from him, a person had appeared without anyone noticing. It was Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao. While he was cultivating, he spared some of his attention to think about why Eunuch Gao had come to him. Eunuch Gao had come in the middle of the night. Obviously, there was something shameful going on. In the end, Leng Shiqi felt that Eunuch Gao was probably trying to recruit him. Now that he thought about it, Eunuch Gao had given him the Cold Nether Manual and a place in the elite association in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Now that he had performed extremely well in the mission to destroy the Extreme Volcano Village, he was even more worthy of being recruited. Greetings, Supervisor Gao. Leng Shiqi immediately stood up and saluted. Eunuch Gao did not speak. He just rolled his eyes, and an extreme chill that seemed to come from the netherworld suddenly appeared. The Cold Nether Manual in Leng Shiqi's body began to operate on its own. Leng Shiqi was shocked, but he did not resist. Then Eunuch Gao nodded gently, and everything returned to normal. You really have practiced the Cold Nether Manual. Apart from that, you also have several cultivation methods. You are not simple. Eunuch Gao said in a hoarse voice. Thank you, Supervisor Gao. Leng Shiqi bowed his head and said respectfully. He did not directly explain why he had practiced so many cultivation methods at the same time. Eunuch Gao curled his lips and did not ask further. Since you have practiced my cultivation method, you can be considered half a disciple of mine. Before Eunuch Gao could continue, Leng Shiqi immediately bowed and shouted, Greetings, Master. Eunuch Gao had only said 2 sentences since he arrived. Leng Shiqi did not hear any malice in those 2 sentences, so he planned to ride on this big ship. Before coming to Donglin County, Yu Ruifeng's words reminded him that even if Leng Shiqi performed well in the elite meeting this time, he would still have to go back to Western Wilderness County in the future. Then at most he would be able to sit in the position of patrol inspector. It would be extremely difficult for him to be promoted. However, if he was only an inspector, it would be unrealistic for him to complete the Blood Seed plan smoothly. Therefore, he had to find a backer within the Dark Thunder Guards to prepare for the future, and Eunuch Gao was very suitable. Therefore, Leng Shiqi wanted to give it a try. It would be great if he succeeded, but if he failed he wouldn't lose anything. Eunuch Gao's expression changed slightly. Then he laughed, and the wrinkles on his face trembled. Haha, you sure know how to climb up a pole. Interesting. Leng Shiqi flipped his hand, and took out a mustard seed bag. This is a small gift that disciple has prepared for Shizhuan. Please accept it. What he took out was almost all the resources he had on him. As long as he could really open a path to Eunuch Gao, any amount of resources would be worth it. Eunuch Gao waved his hand and said, You are smart, but I can only accept you as a nominal disciple at most. Besides, how can I accept your things? On the contrary, I should give you a meeting gift. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi secretly thought that he had made the right bet. You have talent, ability, and skill. I like it very much. You can accept this. As he spoke, he took out a gray token. Leng Shiqi looked at it carefully. There was a mysterious pattern engraved on it, but he didn't find any clues. This is the Imperial Supervisor token. With this token, even the patrol inspector will have to be polite to you. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows. Imperial Supervisor token? According to Eunuch Gao, this thing could even make the patrol inspector afraid? This was equivalent to giving him a lot of power. This disciple thanks Master for the reward. Leng Shiqi immediately lowered his head and said respectfully. Eunuch Gao nodded with satisfaction. Lu Xingji, you are a smart person. I see your potential, so I believe you will give me what I want. Leng Shiqi knew very well that Eunuch Gao was trying to rope him in because he wanted his loyalty. In a few years, there would definitely be a turmoil in the Thunder Flame dynasty. At that time, no one knew which prince would ascend the throne. As the saying went, a new emperor brings new ministers. Eunuch Gao, as the head steward, might not be able to stay out of it. Therefore, he had to start cultivating his own followers. Thus, Leng Shiqi said solemnly, this subordinate will definitely be loyal to Eunuch Gao. Hearing this, Eunuch Gao smiled again. He was very satisfied with Leng Shiqi. Seeing that Leng Shiqi was so sensible, he was even happier. Since you and I are considered master and disciple, I can let you go through the back door. The next test you will undergo will be very interesting. Very interesting? Leng Shiqi wondered if he had heard wrong when Eunuch Gao described the next test like this. However, he didn't expect Eunuch Gao to ask a very strange question. How are your survival skills? Leng Shiqi was stunned for a moment before replying, It's all right. He had the ghostly spring steps, a movement technique that was both light and teleportation. It was very good whether it was chasing or escaping. Eunuch Gao revealed a meaningful smile and said, That's good. However, before the other 2 groups complete their missions, you should think about your survival skills. This sentence made Leng Shiqi's heart skip a beat. It sounded like the next test would be very dangerous. This made him a little bewildered. The elite council was still a selection of talents, so there had never been any deaths. Even if they went to destroy the Extreme Fire Village, there was still a lot of danger. However, if you didn't want to take the risk, you could of course give up. However, you would definitely be eliminated. Moreover, those who could enter the next round were prodigies among prodigies. The Thunderflame dynasty was eager to nurture them. Why would they joke about their lives? However, Leng Shiqi saw that eunuch Gao didn't seem to be joking. Alright, that's all I have to say. You should prepare well. After saying this, a faint cold aura surged out of his body. Then he silently left. Leng Shiqi was still carefully thinking about the meaning of eunuch Gao's words. He then thought about how he didn't seem to have many survival skills other than the ghostly spring steps. This was because his fighting style was rather aggressive. He had always used offense as defense. His storm-like attacks could defeat his opponent in a short period of time. Therefore, he rarely used defensive spirit techniques. Looks like I have to use this time to get more defensive skills. Just as he was thinking to himself, a series of knocks came from outside and pulled his thoughts back. Brother Liu, I am Dichuan. It's very presumptuous of me to visit so late at night, but I have something to discuss with you. Please see me. Chapter 454. Leng Shiqi heard the voice outside and chuckled. Dichuan's visit was within his expectations, so he gathered his thoughts and opened the door. Brother Di, please come in. After the two sat down, Dichuan went straight to the point. Brother Liu, I won't hide it from you. I came here to make a deal with you. As soon as he opened his mouth, Leng Shiqi knew what he was going to say. Dichuan wanted nothing more than the crystal formation pill, but he still deliberately asked, Brother Di, please speak. Brother Liu should know that my cultivation is already at the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm. And I'm not far from condensing a spirit crystal, so I really need a crystal formation pill. Dichuan looked at Leng Shiqi's expression and saw that he was expressionless. Dichuan understood and continued. I came here with sincerity. Brother Liu, please state your conditions. Leng Shiqi thought that it was as expected. Actually, Leng Shiqi didn't really need this pill. First of all, in terms of cultivation, he was still a long way from the peak of the spirit aperture realm. Even if he broke through to the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm, he wouldn't be in a hurry to condense a spirit crystal because he still needed to open up all the spirit apertures. If he really could open up all the 360 spirit apertures in his body, then condensing a spirit crystal wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, he could take out this crystal formation pill to trade. Since they were going to make a deal, Leng Shiqi obviously wanted cultivation methods and spirit techniques the most. However, Dichuan definitely wouldn't hand them over so easily. Even if he was willing to take them out, they wouldn't be of high quality. Therefore, Leng Shiqi planned to see what Dichuan could offer first. He directly took out the crystal formation pill from his mustard seed bracelet and placed it in his hand. Brother Di is really straightforward. I also need this crystal formation pill, but I don't need it urgently. If Brother Di wants it, of course you can take it. I just don't know what Brother Di wants to trade for it. Hearing that Leng Shiqi was willing to trade the crystal formation pill, Dichuan's face immediately lit up. He hurriedly said, Brother Liu, please take a look. As he spoke, he took out a piece of paper with many cultivation resources listed on it. This is the largest amount of resources I can use. Brother Liu can choose whatever you want. Pick at will. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly, but when he finished reading the list on the paper, his face sank again. He said with a displeased tone, Brother Di, forgive me for being blunt, but even if all these things are added together, they are still inferior to the crystal formation pill. Dichuan also blushed. Brother Liu, this is all I have. If it's really not enough, can Brother Liu wait for a while? I will send a message to Ningyang County to transfer some resources over. Leng Shiqi shook his head, showing a hint of disappointment. Brother Di, you still don't understand. These resources are indeed a lot, but they are too ordinary and useless to me. Even if it was 10 times more, I wouldn't agree. Dichuan also understood what Leng Shiqi meant. These resources were not precious enough, and their quality was too low. However, when Dichuan came to participate in the elite meeting, he didn't bring anything too valuable. It was impossible for him to come all the way from Ningyang County in such a short time. Just as he was frowning, he clapped his hands and suddenly thought of something. Then he took out something similar to a finger bone. This thing was grayish-white, and didn't look like a human finger bone. Even if it was left motionless, there would be traces of gray qi lingering around it. As for Lung Shiqi, the moment he saw this thing, he could feel the evil aura from it. And it was a very familiar kind of evil qi. It was the same as the aura of the evil old man that Nine Leaf devoured in Qi City. Lung Shiqi was secretly surprised. He picked up the finger bone and looked at it carefully for a while, but he didn't see anything special about it. He only knew that this thing was definitely not simple. Di Chuan saw that Lung Shiqi seemed to be interested in this thing, so he smiled. Brother Lu, I got this thing by chance on my way from Ningyang County to Donglin Town. I have asked several treasure appraisers to appraise it. They all said that this thing is at least a 6th level treasure, but they can't see how to use it. If you like it, all the resources on the list and this finger bone will belong to you. What do you think? Lung Shiqi began to ponder. After a long while, Di Chuan became more and more anxious. Lung Shiqi said, I'll take this finger bone, but I don't want the things on the list. Hearing this, Di Chuan frowned secretly. Lung Shiqi must have other motives for not wanting the resources. He asked in a low voice, What do you want, Brother Lu? Lung Shiqi chuckled. I want Brother Di to stand on my side. As Lung Shiqi spoke, he looked directly at Di Chuan. Di Chuan quickly reacted. They were all going to enter the next round of the test. No matter who passed the test in the other two groups, they must all be outstanding. Then it was hard to say who would be the leader in the next round. After all, both Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha were strong competitors. So if Lung Shiqi wanted to continue to be the leader, he had to start winning people's hearts. Di Chuan only hesitated a little, and then agreed at once. Not to mention the problem of resources, Lung Shiqi's terrible record of killing masters in Gang Spirit Realm was enough to make Di Chuan bow his head. He nodded and said, Brother Lu, don't worry. I will definitely support you in the next round. Thank you, Brother Di. This crystallization pill is a thank you gift. Lung Shiqi handed over the crystallization pill in his hand. Di Chuan's face lit up with joy. After a few polite words, Di Chuan left happily. Lung Shiqi was still sitting in the chair. After a while, he glanced at a corner of the room and said coldly, How long do you want to hide? However, there was nothing there. Lung Shiqi snorted and flicked out a sword chi of 3 ju. A black flame suddenly rose in that place, and a slim figure appeared. It was Lian Yi. In fact, Lian Yi had sneaked in when Di Chuan pushed the door open and left. It had to be said that her sneaking was very clever. Even Di Chuan, who was a whole realm higher than her, did not notice her. That was to say, Lung Shiqi's spiritual force was very strong, so he felt a trace of strange fluctuation. Lian Yi still wore the black veil on her face, but there was a trace of a smile in her eyes. Mr. Lu is really sensitive. Lung Shiqi looked straight at Lian Yi. In his opinion, since Lian Yi could participate in the elite meeting with the cultivation of the late stage of spiritual pulse realm, she must have a great background. Lian Yi was very low-key in this task, or there was nothing for her to do, so she did not enter the next round. But then again, Lian Yi should be ready to leave Donglin County at this time. Why did she come here in the middle of the night? Lung Shiqi asked directly. If you have something to say it. The smile in Lian Yi's eyes deepened. She said, Should I call you Lu Xingji or Zhuqiu? Chapter 455. When Lung Shiqi heard the name, Zhuqiu from Lian Yi, he was shocked. He had used this identity to enter the illusory spirit secret realm, and fought with Lian Yi. However, Lian Yi's memory should have been tampered with by Meng Tianzong. How did she recognize him now? However, on second thought, Lung Shiqi realized that Lian Yi's memories should have been tampered with before she entered the alternate dimension of the Divine Dream Palace. Therefore, the memories of their initial battles still existed. Perhaps she had recognized him as Zhuqiu from some clues. Although Lung Shiqi was shocked, he still maintained a calm expression. He said indifferently, If Miss Lian Yi is here to say these strange things to me, please leave. Lian Yi acted as if she did not hear Lung Shiqi's words and continued, Actually, I came to the elite gathering purely to join in the fun. However, the moment I saw you, I felt a sense of déjà vu from you. However, I am certain that I have never seen you before. This has puzzled me, so I began to observe you. I have been observing you all this time. When you fought with Dichuan and Jiwen, even though your cultivation methods and spirit techniques were very different from before, there were still traces that could be traced, and there was still a sense of familiarity between your moves. I remember when I left the illusory spirit secret realm, I knew that you and Ozu had obtained the Divine Illusion Palace's legacy cultivation method. I specially went to look through the secrets of the Divine Illusion Palace. In the end, I found that the spirit technique you used when fighting with Ji-Wen was very similar to the 5-God flowing light technique recorded in the secret records. You can't be Ozu, so you are Zhuqiu. Leng Shiqi was truly shocked that Lian Yi could accurately identify the 5-God flowing light technique. This cultivation method was passed down from 10,000 years ago. Where did Lian Yi find the secret records of the Divine Illusion Palace to be so detailed? She even knew the cultivation method and spirit techniques, like the back of her hand. Lian Yi's identity made Leng Shiqi even more surprised and curious. Since he had been recognized, Leng Shiqi no longer hid it. He said straightforwardly, "State your conditions." The condition he spoke of was naturally the condition for Lian Yi to keep his secret. Unexpectedly, Lian Yi shook her head and said, "I don't have any conditions. I just want you to answer a few of my questions truthfully." Lian Yi's actions made Leng Shiqi feel even more troubled. He said, "Ask away." Lian Yi sat opposite Leng Shiqi. She stared at Leng Shiqi with her black gem-like eyes and said, "I know you're not Zhuqiu either. That Zhuqiu is just an ordinary rogue cultivator. How could he reach the middle stage of Spirit Aperture Realm in 2 years, and have the power to kill Gang Spirit Realm Masters? Therefore Lu Xingji is your original identity, right? According to what I know, you are the disciple of Chu Hajing, a loose cultivator at the unity of heaven and man realm. He was also the one who pulled strings to stuff you into the Dark Thunder Guards. After that, you used your Spirit Pulse realm cultivation to quickly eliminate dissidents and secure your position as supervisor. After that, you single-handedly destroyed a third-rate sect, the Profound Yang sect. Then you went on a diplomatic mission to Zhulu country. Coincidentally, Zhulu country went through a great change. When you returned, you were already at the Spirit Aperture Realm and had been promoted to Great Supervisor. It can be said that you are full of surprises and inconceivable. Therefore, I'm very curious, who are you? At the end, Lian Yi's eyes became somewhat cold. On the other hand, the more Leng Shiqi listened, the more shocked he became. Lian Yi had actually investigated him from beginning to end. Moreover, Lian Yi had been carrying out missions with him all this time. How did she find out? This Lian Yi can not only get detailed information about the Divine Illusion Palace from 10,000 years ago, but she can also find information about the West Baron Prefecture, and even Zhulu country. In the Dark Thunder Guards, even the famous inspector might not have this kind of authority, right? Just who is she? Leng Shiqi thought to himself. At the same time, killing intent appeared in his heart. However, this killing intent was instantly dispelled by him. Lian Yi's identity indeed made him a bit cautious. Even if he wanted to kill her, he couldn't do it here. Therefore he said, "Just as you said, you have already investigated my identity. You already know who I am, so why are you still asking me?" Lian Yi didn't seem to be satisfied with this answer. She said in a cold voice, "There is indeed no problem with your background. However, the problem is that before you appeared in the illusory spirit secret realm, there was nothing special about you. However, since the illusory spirit secret realm, your opportunities, cultivation, and strength have all increased at an unimaginable rate. I'm not boasting, but even in the entire Thunderflame dynasty, those who can cultivate to the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm at my age can be counted on one hand. However, you, in less than 2 years, jumped from the early stage of the Spirit Pulse realm to the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture realm. Your identity also changed from a rank 1 rogue cultivator to a supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards. This kind of change was simply appalling. It's as if you've become a completely different person." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi laughed involuntarily. "These things may seem inconceivable to you, but everything I have today was exchanged with my life. You haven't experienced what despair is, you haven't stepped into the abyss. If you had experienced life and death several times, I think you wouldn't have come to question me. Lian Ye's eyes changed slightly. She stared blankly for a moment before saying, what you said may be reasonable, but you are still very suspicious. Leng Shiqi finally understood. It seemed that Lian Yi hadn't reported her suspicions of him yet. She only came tonight to ask about it. This made him feel a bit more at ease. He replied, I think you're thinking too much. My actions in the Western Desolate Province were all under the eyes of Supervisor Yu Ruifeng. Moreover, it was he who brought me to Zhulugua. However, there are some secrets that you don't know. If you really can't, you can ask Sir Yu what happened in Zhulugua. Moreover, it was Eunuch Gao who allowed me to participate in the elite meeting. You can not believe me, but you can't not believe Sir Yu and Eunuch Gao, right? Could it be that I can control them? He brought up Supervisor Yu Ruifeng and Eunuch Gao, one of the 4 supervisors of the Dark Thunder Guards. This made Lian Yi start to waver. She thought to herself, could it be that I really missed some crucial information? This won't do. When I go back, I have to carefully investigate. This Lu Xingji is too outstanding. He will most likely be transferred to the headquarters in the future. He can't be unclean at all. Leng Shiqi saw that she didn't speak and struck while the iron was hot. He flipped his hand and a ball of cold underworld energy condensed in his palm. With your knowledge, you should be able to see what this is. This is cold underworld energy. You cultivate the cold underworld scripture. Lian Yi exclaimed in a low voice. At the same time, she looked at Leng Shiqi with a strange gaze. Chapter 456. Leng Shiqi admitted, that's right. This is the cold nether scripture. Eunuch Gao has already passed it to me. This means that I'm definitely trustworthy. Lian Yi was both surprised and puzzled when she saw Leng Shiqi use the cold nether scripture. She knew about the cold nether scripture. It was a cultivation technique created by Eunuch Gao. However, she had the impression that only Eunuch Gao's adopted sons cultivated this cultivation technique. Could it be that Lu Xingji is a... Lian Yi sized up Leng Shiqi, causing him to feel cold all over. However, most of the suspicion in her heart had been dispelled. She had some understanding of Eunuch Gao. If Leng Shiqi's background wasn't clean, then Eunuch Gao would definitely not pass the cultivation technique to Leng Shiqi. Eunuch Gao's actions not only proved that Leng Shiqi's background was clean, it also meant that he wanted to nurture Leng Shiqi as a trusted aide. Lian Yi lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Since that's the case, then I'll take it that I've wronged you. However, the matter of you attacking me in the illusory spirit secret realm isn't over. This. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be stunned. If he remembered correctly, it was clearly Lian Yi who attacked him first in the illusory spirit secret realm. Why was it the other way around now? However, Leng Shiqi became vigilant when Lian Yi mentioned the illusory spirit secret realm. After all, there were very few people who knew that he was Zhuo Chuyu, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace's cultivation technique. If Lian Yi were to leak this news, it would definitely bring him endless trouble. Miss Lian Yi, you secretly investigated me for the sake of the Dark Lightning Guards, so I don't mind. However, I hope that Miss Lian Yi won't leak the fact that I once used the identity of Zhuo Chuyu. Of course. What Leng Shiqi did not expect was that Lian Yi would actually agree immediately. However, in the end she rolled her eyes and said, but I have a condition. When he heard the word condition, Leng Shiqi felt even more assured. If Lian Yi didn't mention anything, then he would think too much. Speak your mind. If you come to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters in the future, help me do something. Lian Yi put forward her condition. However, this condition caused Leng Shiqi to frown. This kind of condition was the most troublesome. He asked in return, Miss Lian Yi is so confident that I will be transferred to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters? Lian Yi chuckled. Eunuch Gao even passed on the cultivation method to you. Wouldn't it be a matter of time before you were transferred to headquarters? Don't worry, the things I ask you to do will definitely be within the scope of your ability, and you will be compensated accordingly. Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment. He could imagine that what Lian Yi wanted him to do was related to the internal strife of the Dark Thunder Guard. However, he was already on Eunuch Gao's side. If he agreed now, how would he explain himself to eunuch Gao in the future? Seeing that Leng Shiqi was still hesitating, Lian Yi continued, "Don't think too much about it. That matter is my personal matter, but I can't tell you right now." Private matters? Then there was no problem. Helping her with a private matter could eliminate countless troubles. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Thus Leng Shiqi said, "This one will listen to Miss Lian Ye's orders. However, if Miss Lian Ye's request is too excessive, then forgive this one for going back on his word." "Okay, I believe Brother Lu won't go back on his word. It's late, this one will take her leave first." After Lian Yi finished speaking, she turned into a black shadow and left. Leng Shiqi looked at Lian Ye's departing figure with a cold glint in his eyes. Today's Lian Yi was much more mature and shrewd than before. However, it was still not deep enough. Fortunately, it was not deep enough. Leng Shiqi brought out eunuch Gao to wash away his suspicions, but there was a flaw in it. He made Lian Yi subconsciously think that eunuch Gao knew everything about him. In reality, eunuch Gao did not know that he had entered the illusory spirit secret realm with a fake identity in the celestial layer. Lian Yi was still a bit naive. Leng Shiqi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Tonight, 3 people had come to find him in succession. Among them, he had known about the arrival of eunuch Gao and Di Chuan in advance. However, Lian Ye's appearance had really given him a wake-up call. Regardless of Lian Ye's identity, since she could investigate him so thoroughly, then there must be someone else in the Dark Thunder Guards who could find out. The reason why Lian Yi was able to confirm that he was Zhuo Chuyu was because she recognized that the rotating ice and fire-flowing light array came from the 5 God-flowing light art. It seems that I can't use any spiritual skills related to the 5 God-flowing light art so easily. It's best if I can fuse these spiritual skills again and change them. Leng Shiqi secretly made up his mind. Then, he used the soul-splitting technique to split half of his consciousness into the illusory spirit world, and began to deduce and fuse the spiritual skills. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The other 2 groups that had destroyed the Great Righteousness Sect and the Salt Clan had also completed their missions. The destruction of these 2 sects had once again caused an earthquake in Donglin County. Although the destruction of the Extreme Fire Manor had attracted the attention of many people, it was still the Twin Pole Mountain stronghold that had destroyed it. There was a deep hatred between the 2 sides. Sooner or later, there would be a battle between the 2, so everyone discussed it for a while. However, in the short span of a month, the second-rate Great Righteousness Sect and the Salt Clan had been destroyed one after another. 3 second-rate sects had ceased to exist in a row. This kind of thing had never happened in Donglin County. Even in the entire Thunderfire dynasty, there was no precedent like this. This instantly made everyone feel that a storm was coming. One had to know that these 2 sects were not just second-rate forces. They could be said to be the Mountain Sea sect's pawn and the Mountain Sea sect's money bag. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that someone was targeting the Mountain Sea sect. However, the Mountain Sea sect was a top force on the world's ranking of sects and dominated Donglin County. Who would dare to target the Mountain Sea sect? Who would have the ability to target the Mountain Sea sect? Moreover, many people had received information that these 3 destroyed forces had a large number of mysterious Spirit Aperture Realm experts participating. When did so many Spirit Aperture Realm experts appear in Donglin County? Connecting all these together, some people guessed that this was very likely the Thunderfire dynasty's doing. The dynasty wanted to suppress the Mountain Sea sect and take back the hegemony of Donglin County. As the news spread, all the spirit cultivator sects in Donglin County were suddenly in danger. If this guess was true, then the dynasty and the Mountain Sea sect would definitely fight. At that time they might also be implicated. Weren't the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Clan the best examples? At this time, in the main hall of the Donglin City's City Lord's mansion, there were about 20 people gathered. These people were the instigators of the destruction of the 3 forces, and they were the best among them. Other than eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan who sat at the top, the others were clearly divided into 3 groups. They were respectively led by Leng Shiqi, Wu Diao, and Zhuge Puha. However, the number of people in these 3 groups was different. Leng Shiqi had a total of 7 people, which was the group with the largest number of people, Wu Diao had 6 people, and Jugapuha only had 5. At this moment, they were all standing with their hands behind their backs, looking respectful. Lei Mayan looked at the 18 people with a smile on her face. The 18 of you can be called the elites of the elites. Now, I will tell you the next round of the mission. Everyone's expression became serious. The first round of the test was to destroy a second-rate force, so the second round would definitely be more difficult. Chapter 457. Lei Mayan retracted her smile. She stretched out her jade-like arm, and bracelets flew out from it. The bracelets suddenly split into 5 different colored halos. She continuously formed seals, and the 5 bracelets instantly blossomed with radiance. Once again, they gradually overlapped with each other, forming a dusky light door. This is the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. There is a small space inside. Your test is inside, and your mission is to come out of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise alive. As soon as she said this, everyone's expression froze. Coming out alive was considered to have completed the mission? That meant that there was definitely danger inside that could threaten their lives. Of course, none of these people had any thoughts of wavering, and none of them were willing to withdraw, because they knew that if they really passed the test, what awaited them would definitely be soaring into the sky. Not only could they enter the dragon vein to cultivate, their future path of advancement would be smooth. Under this kind of strong pressure, everyone became even more motivated. Lei Mayan flicked her finger, and instantly, more than a dozen streams of light hit everyone's body. Lung Shiqi lowered his head to look, and a small blue token appeared in his hand. Coming out alive is the most basic requirement. Everyone has one of these tokens, and you can compete with each other without any restrictions. In addition, there are also some strange creatures in the paradise. Killing them can give you soul stones. 1 kilogram of soul stones can be exchanged for a token. After you come out, the 5 people with the most tokens will be considered to have passed the test. Everyone present looked at each other with hostility in their eyes. In the end, only 5 out of the 18 of them could pass the test. Moreover, they could snatch the tokens from each other. This was to let them kill each other. At this moment, everyone standing here was an enemy. Perhaps in this minor 5 elements chaos paradise, the most dangerous thing was not the strange creatures, but these people. Alright, the minor 5 elements chaos paradise can only be maintained for 7 days at most. Hurry up and go in. As for how to come out, you can think of a way yourselves. At this point, Lei Mayan waved her hand, and everyone walked into the gray door of light one by one. As soon as he walked through the door, Lung Shiqi felt as if the world around him had turned upside down. However, he was still very calm. He had experienced this kind of situation many times, and was starting to get used to it. When his eyes were able to see, all he could see was a thick layer of yellow sand. As far as the eye could see, this place seemed like a desert, and there was no one around him. Lung Shiqi muttered to himself. It seems that everyone has been separated. He looked around and found that the surrounding environment was almost exactly the same. There was not a single point of reference. Under such circumstances, even if he walked in a certain direction, he would unknowingly deviate from it. Moreover, he didn't know where to go. As Lung Shiqi pondered, an idea flashed through his mind. He immediately opened the system map. Previously, he had spent a total of 10,000 system coins to obtain a full map. However, he did not know if the system map would be of any use in this mini chaos paradise. When he opened the system map, he saw that the map immediately showed 6 areas of different colors. The system map was actually effective. Lung Shiqi could not help but be delighted. He remembered that when he was at Gushan Peak, and was pulled into that small space by Tu Deng, the system map was not of any use. He could not help but sigh. That 10,000 system coins was really worth it. He immediately began to carefully study the map of this paradise. First, there were 5 areas of different colors that were distributed in a pentagon shape. He was currently in the yellow area, at the bottom right corner. He was not very far from the red area. These 5 regions should represent the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, and I'm in the earth region. It's a pity that this map can't show other people's locations. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi suddenly froze. Since the system map could be used, then the fate skill should be able to be used as well. As long as he activated the fate skill, he would be able to quickly find the others. Just as Leng Shiqi was about to activate the skill, the yellow sand under his feet suddenly shone with a strange rhythm. Immediately, Leng Shiqi suddenly knelt down. He actually felt as if his body was suddenly pressed down by a mountain, making it impossible for him to get up. His face was red, and layers of sweat instantly seeped out of his face. Even the blood in his body began to drop, and his meridians and bones emitted a slight friction sound. Leng Shiqi exclaimed in his heart, the gravity has increased. What surprised him the most was that the strength of his body was not weak. He had never forgotten to temper his body, and now, with just the strength of his body, he was comparable to a spirit cultivator in the early or middle stages of the spirit pulse stage. Even so, he was still pressed down by the invisible gravity to the point that he could not breathe. One could imagine how strong the gravity was. Leng Shiqi's mind moved, and black and red demonic chi surged as the demonic beast blood rune armor attached to his body, reducing the pressure on him by a lot. He could finally stand up with difficulty. However, he was still worried. He had a strong body and the demonic beast blood rune armor, so he could only stand with difficulty. What about the others? Wouldn't they be pressed to the ground and unable to move? What worried him was that in this situation, if the strange creature that Lei Mian spoke of appeared, what should he do? If he couldn't even move, wouldn't that be the same as sending himself to death? Rustle, rustle, rustle. Suddenly, rustling sounds came from the surroundings, and then small mounds emerged from the yellow sand on the ground, as if something was about to come out. The corner of Leng Shiqi's mouth twitched. He didn't expect that he had the potential to jinx it. He hurriedly lifted his foot, but found that even lifting it a little was extremely difficult. Immediately, his entire body overflowed with demonic chi and gathered at his feet. He used the Netherworld Ghost Steps. The Netherworld Ghost Steps that could originally be as fast as a ghost could only allow him to run at the speed of a normal mortal. But in the blink of an eye, the small mounds around him finally broke out of the ground. Looking closely, they were monsters that seemed to be formed from small stones. These monsters were not big, only as tall as a person, but they did not have legs. They floated in the air, and with a casual movement, they could float more than 10 feet away. Seeing this scene, Leng Shiqi's heart was bitter beyond words. He remembered that night when Eunuch Gao had asked him about his ability to escape and survive. At that time he was still a little confident. But now, it seemed that he had overestimated himself. Because even if he used his fastest speed, it was far from being able to compare to these stone monsters. Leng Shiqi took a deep breath, and his eyes flashed with a dense killing intent. Since he could not escape, then he would kill them all. Chapter 458. Leng Shiqi took out the Devil Advent battle saber, but the arm that was holding the saber's hilt suddenly dropped. He frowned and put away the demon arrival battle blade. It was already very difficult for him to move, and using a spiritual weapon here was a burden. Then Leng Shiqi pointed his index finger, and a blood-red lightning shot through the air. The thunderclap blood heavenly finger was supposed to be as fast as lightning, but now it was affected by gravity, and its speed was much slower. Fortunately, the stone monsters did not seem to have much intelligence, and the thunderclap blood heavenly finger still hit one of them. The blood-red lightning instantly poked a large hole in the stone monster's body, but the stone monster did not feel anything and continued to stick close to him as if nothing had happened. Leng Shiqi used his fingers as a sword, and with a shake of his arm, dozens of tri-extinction sword chi were released in an instant, enveloping all the stone monsters around him. With a series of clanking sounds, the stone monsters were scattered by the tri-extinction sword chi, but most of them stood up shakily. Leng Shiqi's expression became more and more serious. These monsters did not have much intelligence, and their defense was not very strong, but they were very difficult to kill. If he did not specifically cultivate a body tempering technique, he would be tortured to death by these monsters sooner or later. I can't fight them here, and the demonic beast blood rune armor can't be maintained for too long. I should leave this place first. Lung Shiqi changed his plan. He raised his hand, and a few fingernail-sized black crystals flew out from the fragments of the monsters he had killed. These were the soul stones that Lei Mayan had mentioned. Then, a large amount of cold air rose from his feet, and this cold air spread out like a wave, freezing all the stone monsters nearby. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he quickly activated the Fate skill, and the system map immediately appeared and began to enlarge. Lung Shiqi stared at the map, and there were indeed more than 10 figures on it. After 2 breaths, he found the location of the Delta Origi. However, his pupils suddenly shrank, and then he disappeared in the red, blue, and yellow light. At this moment in the wood region, this place was like a deep and serene forest. The only thing that stood out from the rest was that it was a withered forest. Although there were countless trees and all kinds of plants that he had never seen before, these plants were all withered and looked like they were about to die. And at this time, 2 people were fighting. One of them was dressed in a green robe that covered his face. Only a pair of cold eyes that were filled with killing intent could be seen. His cultivation was at the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm. With a wave of his hand, all the plants nearby were controlled at will as if they were his arms. It seemed that he was a spiritual caster of wood. The other person was the Delta Origi. At this moment, Delta Origi was completely at a disadvantage. The green-robed man's cultivation was far above hers, and in this unique environment, Delta Origi was already struggling. The green-robed man said with a cold expression, "A mere early-stage spirit aperture realm cultivator can enter this place. However, I happened to meet you, so I picked up a token for free. Little girl, hand over the token obediently. This place is constantly absorbing our spiritual energy. You will be defeated sooner or later. Give me the token now, and you may be able to save your life." Delta Origi did not answer because she had already seen the killing intent in the green-robed man's eyes. Therefore, even if she handed over the token, the green-robed man would still not let her go. Delta Origi immediately forced out more than 10 drops of blood essence from her fingers. Her face instantly turned pale, and the blood essence condensed into 3 sparkling bloodlines, and then attached to her autumn water-like long sword. The spiritual sword turned into a blood sword in the blink of an eye. Delta Origi was going to fight with all her might. However, Delta Origi's expression was normal. Whether it was on the Blood Fog Island or in the Blood Prison, she had fought with all her might too many times. When the green-robed man saw this, the smile on his face disappeared. He actually felt a trace of danger from Delta Origi's body. A person who had just entered the Spirit Aperture Realm was actually a threat to him, a 7th-level Spirit Aperture Realm cultivator. The green-robed man's hand seals flew, and the 2 towering trees beside him were uprooted, turning into 2 huge beasts that attacked from both sides. Delta Origi's blood sword trembled, and a layer of ghost fire ignited on it. Soon after, a blood-colored sword slashed out like a waterfall. The sword slashed on the huge trees, and immediately tore open terrifying scars one after another, but the huge trees did not feel the slightest bit. Every branch on the huge trees turned into sharp spears and long swords, ruthlessly stabbing towards Delta Origi, completely trapping her in a sinister cage. At this moment, the green-robed man could be considered to have forced Delta Origi into a desperate situation. She also had some explosive and escape methods, but once she used them, there was a possibility that her true identity would be exposed. But if she didn't use them, she might really die here. Just as Delta Origi was about to use her trump card, a beam of red, blue, and yellow light suddenly appeared, and a figure wearing demonic armor walked out from the light. Delta Origi and the green-robed man's gaze immediately turned towards him. To be able to appear in such a manner, he was undoubtedly an expert. However, the green-robed man did not know if this person was a participant of the elite meeting, or a monster that originally existed in this world. However, in the next moment, that person actually staggered a few steps forward, and almost fell to the ground. A stunned expression immediately appeared on the green-robed man's face. What kind of situation was this? Delta Origi also recognized that this person was Lung Shiqi. She once saw Leng Shiqi wearing this demonic armor when he fought against the disciples of Liuha's spiritual region. Of course, Leng Shiqi was directly teleported over using the fate skill. However, when he suddenly went from the gravity space of the Earth region to a normal space, his body was not used to it, so he almost fell. After he steadied himself, his pair of green-white eyes looked towards the green-robed man, and his eyes emitted undisguised killing intent. The green-robed man could not figure out Leng Shiqi for a moment. Just as he was about to test him, Leng Shiqi moved first. Leng Shiqi raised his hands to the sky, and a burst of dazzling light suddenly appeared. In an instant, a blazing sun with blazing green flames condensed into a blazing sun. The green-robed man's expression changed, and his hand seals changed, intending to order the two giant trees to attack Leng Shiqi. Unfortunately, at this moment, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. He only saw 5 tall giants that looked like gods appear in front of him, making him want to kneel at their feet. He even completely forgot what he was doing. At the same time, Delta Origi used her sword technique, and a blood-colored crescent moon rose behind her. The poison sun shone brightly, and the blood moon was eerie. Under the sun and moon shining together, the two giant tree monsters were crushed one after another. And then the green-robed man who was distracted for a moment lost his life. The green-robed man, who was so arrogant just a moment ago, was instantly killed by the two of them. With the green-robed man dead, Delta Origi finally breathed a sigh of relief. She nodded to Leng Shiqi, and then swallowed a pill to recover her spiritual energy. However, her face was still very pale. The pill could help her quickly recover her spiritual energy, but the blood she lost could only be slowly recovered. Leng Shiqi skillfully hooked the green-robed man's mustard seed bag and secretly absorbed his remnant soul. At this time, Delta Origi walked over, panting, and lifted the green-robed man's hood with the tip of her sword. Who is this person? It seems to be Zhugepu's team. Leng Shiqi shrugged. A dead person's name, don't worry about it. Chapter 459. That's true. Delta Origi nodded slightly. Leng Shiqi removed his warbeast armor and looked around. When he came to this area, he quickly noticed that the spiritual energy in his body was constantly overflowing. This should be the restriction of the wood area. However, compared to the abnormal gravity of the Earth area, this place was really much better. After all, which person who could enter the second round didn't have a large number of pills on them? As long as the pills weren't exhausted, the loss of spiritual energy was completely within an acceptable range. But Leng Shiqi thought about it again. If this was the only restriction, then the difference between this place and the Earth area was too big. So he asked Delta Origi, apart from this green-robed man, did you encounter any other dangers? Delta Origi shook her head and said, no, I bumped into him not long after I arrived. We fought without saying anything. And then you suddenly appeared. Leng Shiqi's appearance was also bizarre, but Delta Origi didn't ask too much, because she knew that Leng Shiqi had too many secrets and was full of all kinds of inconceivable things. So no matter what shocking actions Leng Shiqi did, she would feel that it was normal. The reason why this place is called the Minor 5 Elements Chaos Paradise is that it is divided into 5 different areas according to the 5 elements. In the middle of them, there is a very mysterious place. Let's call it the Chaos area. When I entered this paradise, I appeared in the Earth area. That place is full of terrifying gravity. Even if I use all my strength, I can barely move. It can be said that it is very dangerous. And this place doesn't seem to be too dangerous, but it is a bit unreasonable. Leng Shiqi said what he knew, what he experienced, and what he guessed. Delta Origi fell into deep thought. According to Leng Shiqi, this place was indeed a bit too peaceful. Let's not think about this for now. Buyangqiu is also in the wood area. Let's meet up with him first. The more people there are, the easier it will be to deal with the danger. Before Leng Shiqi prepared to teleport, he also memorized the area where everyone was and their approximate location. There were only 5 or 6 people in each area, and they all encountered various threats. For example, the temperature in the fire region was extremely high, and there were monsters similar to flame spirits inside. The water region was a world of ice and snow, and many snow giants were chasing after the spirit cultivator. The air of the metal region was filled with needle-like, formless radiance. There were also groups of golden-armored guards in formation. As for the chaotic region, even the system map would not be able to detect it. While the two of them swallowed the pills, they carefully rushed towards Buyangqiu's direction. Along the way, it was very peaceful and they didn't encounter any monsters. However, when they arrived, they didn't see Buyangqiu. There wasn't even anyone in Byakugan's field of vision. Leng Shiqi wasn't too surprised. After all, it had been quite some time since he used fate. Buyangqiu might have moved to another location. Just then, Delta Origi made a sound of surprise. What's wrong? Leng Shiqi turned to look at Delta Origi and found that her face was very strange. Delta Origi first closed her eyes, as if she was sensing something. After a few breaths, she suddenly opened her eyes, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. She anxiously said, "There's something wrong with my spirit energy. Quick, check your spiritual energy." When Leng Shiqi saw Delta Origi's appearance, he knew that she must have discovered something big. He hurriedly looked inside and quickly found the problem. That was, his spirit energy had decreased. This wasn't a decrease after he used his spirit technique, but a permanent decrease. Logically speaking, after using a spirit technique, the spirit energy in his body would definitely be consumed. However, as long as he spent some time, the spirit energy would naturally be replenished. But now, Leng Shiqi found that the upper limit of his spirit energy had decreased. In other words, his cultivation was regressing. "I understand," Leng Shiqi said in a deep voice. "Our spirit energy is not slowly decreasing, but disappearing forever." At first, Leng Shiqi did not pay too much attention to the spirit energy in his body. Although he was a little strange that the recovery speed of his spirit energy was slower than before, he did not think too much about it. Now, it seemed that although there was no great danger in the wood region, the hidden danger was more terrifying than the earth region. Spirit energy was the foundation of a spirit cultivator. As the saying goes, the path of spirit cultivation was like sailing against the current. Now Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi's spirit energy cultivation was gradually decreasing. This was a little difficult for the two who pursued power to accept. At the same time, they thought that they had to leave this region first. Leng Shiqi immediately opened the system map. He compared it with the distance he had traveled. The wood region should be about 100 miles in radius. There were two regions closest to them. One was the metal region, and the other was the mysterious chaos region. Soon, Leng Shiqi made a decision to go to the chaos region. This minor 5 elements chaos grotto heaven was clearly centered around the chaos region. Perhaps their final test would be in the chaos region. Of course, there might be greater danger in there, but Leng Shiqi really could not bear the feeling of his spirit energy being drained for no reason. He chose a direction and led Delta Origi straight to the chaos region. With their speed, it would only take half a day to reach the chaos region. In this dense forest, two exceptionally nimble figures constantly flitted past. But suddenly, Leng Shiqi's body paused. Delta Origi suddenly stopped and turned her head in confusion. Leng Shiqi's face was gloomy, and there was even a trace of disbelief on his face. Delta Origi rarely saw Leng Shiqi with such an expression. She subconsciously asked, "What did you notice?" Sigh. Leng Shiqi sighed deeply. "This wood region is far more complicated than we thought." The reason why he sighed was because when he opened the map to see how far they were, he was shocked to find that they had actually gone astray. At this time, they should have almost reached the intersection of the two regions, but now they were actually back to the center of the wood region. When Leng Shiqi said this, Delta Origi was also shocked. This kind of thing had happened before on Blood Mist Island, but at that time, they had only just entered the spirit transformation realm, and were confused by the fog. Now the two of them were both in the spirit aperture realm. Leng Shiqi's spiritual power was enormous, and his perception was far beyond that of spirit cultivators of the same level. He also had the Byakugan and the system map in his hands. How could they have unknowingly gone astray? How was this possible? Chapter 460. Lung Shiqi quickly calmed himself down. He thought about it carefully and realized that there was actually a way to deal with this predicament. As long as he kept Byakugan and the system map open, he could still leave this place after finding the right direction. At this moment, he finally understood that the danger of the wood region did not lie in the monsters, but in the fact that they would trap you here and slowly drain your spiritual energy. If you stayed here for too long without leaving, your cultivation realm would drop again and again. At that time, even if you were lucky enough to leave, you would not have enough strength to face other dangers. It could be said that the wood region was a soft knife. Now, it seemed that when they went to find Buyangqiu, it was not that he had gone far, but that they had already deviated from their original direction. Then what should we do now? Delta Orgi asked. Lung Shiqi calmed himself down and said, "Don't worry, I have a way. I was a bit careless before." After saying that, Lung Shiqi directly opened Byakugan, and everything within a radius of 12 miles was within his field of vision. At the same time, he kept opening the system map to correct his direction. "Let's go." The two of them started to walk again, but this time, their path was very strange in the eyes of others. They would change their direction every once in a while, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, and sometimes even to the back. But in reality, they were indeed slowly approaching the chaos region. Lung Shiqi looked at the mark on the system map, and his heart completely calmed down. At first, when he first entered the minor chaos paradise and found out that the system map could be used, he was actually a bit happy. This was equivalent to activating a full map hack. It made him feel like he had everything under control, but it was this mentality that caused him to suffer a little. If he was more cautious and careful, he should have already reached the chaos region. Now he had wasted so much time for nothing and lost a portion of his spiritual energy for nothing. This was the price he had to pay. While Lung Shiqi was running, he could not help but look at Delta Origi. Delta Origi's cultivation was only at the first level of the spirit aperture realm. If they stayed here for too long, their cultivation might drop. If his carelessness caused the Delta Origi to fall, he would not know how to face the Delta Origi. However, the Delta Origi didn't notice Lung Shiqi's gaze, because they could already see layers of gray fog in their field of vision. That was the primal chaos region. When the two of them got closer, they immediately felt an indescribable aura from the gray fog. It gave them an ominous feeling. Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi looked at each other, their eyes filled with determination. This area is the center of this mini paradise. There must be quite a bit of danger inside. We must be extra careful. As Lung Shiqi spoke, he donned his demonic beast blood rune armor and gripped his inky jade sword. He was ready to fight at any moment. Delta Origi also took a deep breath. Her ink-black hair instantly turned gray, and her entire body gave off a dangerous feeling. Immediately, the two of them walked into the gray fog together. The surrounding scenery suddenly changed, but the scene in front of Lung Shiqi was a little unexpected. He thought that the gray fog was so ominous that there must be some demons and ghosts inside. Who would have thought that what appeared in front of him at this time was a lush green valley? All kinds of flowers were in full bloom, and the breeze carried bursts of floral fragrance. It was like a paradise. Only the gray fog floating in the sky made people feel a little depressed. What was even more amazing was that the spiritual energy here was abnormally rich. Moreover, it was not the normal spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It did not seem to contain any strange attributes, but the purest spiritual energy that was close to the origin. No matter what attribute you cultivated, you could cultivate to your heart's content here. Lung Shiqi could not help but blink, afraid that he was mistaken. This place clearly looked like a paradise. He muttered, "The primal chaos region is actually like this? What do you think, Delta Origi?" However, he did not hear Delta Origi's voice. Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly turned around, but there was no one beside him. Lung Shiqi gripped the inky jade sword tightly, fully activating his Byakugan and perception. However, to his surprise, his Byakugan could only detect the situation within 1 mile. As for his perception, it could barely leave his body. The primal chaos region can actually greatly suppress perception and detection. Lung Shiqi was secretly shocked. But even so, Delta Origi can't move 1 mile away in an instant. That gray fog is very strange. Lung Shiqi could not help but frown. He had just found Delta Origi, and not long after, they were separated again. Delta Origi was still injured, and her cultivation was not high. He was more or less a little worried. However, on second thought, Delta Origi was able to come out of Blood Mist Island and Blood Prison. This proved her strength and ability. Moreover, Delta Origi was the disciple of Bone Demon. She must have some trump cards in her hands. She should not be in danger for the time being. Lung Shiqi looked left and right, found a small path, and walked along it. He was vigilant at all times, and after about an hour he actually saw a small village in the distance. The village was not big, but it was still crisscross with traffic. Smoke rose in spirals, and from time to time he could hear a few children's laughter. There was a village in this place? There were still living people in this place? Lung Shiqi subconsciously felt that something was wrong. He was very careful as he approached the village. Just as he walked to the entrance of the village, he heard a burst of wind blowing from inside. Then a funeral procession came out. At the front, there was a middle-aged man with a pale face wearing mourning clothes. He held a white banner, expressionless. Behind him, 2 people walked and scattered paper money. Behind him, there were 4 people carrying a heavy coffin. There were dozens of people following behind them, all of them crying and wailing. However, there were also a few children in colorful clothes who were laughing at the back of the procession. They seemed a little out of place. Lung Shiqi's greenish-white eyes kept flashing with spiritual light. There seemed to be nothing wrong with this group of mourners. Everyone here was made of flesh and blood, and they were all living beings. In other words, these people were all real people. Lung Shiqi watched coldly as the procession walked past him. He did not expect that the last old man to notice him. The old man walked over and showed Lung Shiqi a kind smile. "Guest, you must have come from afar. Why don't you come into the village and rest for a while?" Lung Shiqi sensed again. The old man in front of him did not have any abnormalities. He was a very ordinary person. He put on a harmless smile and said, "I've traveled for a long time, and I'm tired. I'll have to trouble you then." Chapter 461. The old man brought Lung Shiqi into the village. Lung Shiqi looked around as he walked. The entire village seemed very peaceful. The villagers in the village were also more hospitable. When they saw Lung Shiqi, they would smile warmly. However, Lung Shiqi always felt strange because these people's smiles were full of hypocrisy. The old man brought Lung Shiqi to a black canopy that had been set up. Inside the canopy, there were round tables that were more than 100 feet long. Every table was filled with people who were eating and drinking heartily. The old man said, "Guest, what a coincidence. There is a wedding banquet today. Guest, if you are weak, please take a seat." Wedding banquet? Lung Shiqi glanced at the old man. This was clearly a funeral banquet. When did it become a wedding banquet? Leaving the sea of suffering and ascending to paradise. Isn't this a wedding banquet? The old man explained. "Old man, you are right." Lung Shiqi nodded, but he did not take a seat. Because in his perception, these people were not eating delicious food. They were clearly eating rotten maggots. The wine they were drinking also exuded a strong smell of corpses. Lung Shiqi naturally could not eat or drink these things. At this time, the burly man next to him handed over a bowl of wine. "Guest, this is the strongest wine in our village. Come and try it." Before the burly man finished speaking, he poured the bowl of wine directly into Lung Shiqi's mouth. Lung Shiqi snorted coldly, and an invisible spiritual force spread out and pushed the burly man away. However, the strange thing was that Lung Shiqi had clearly controlled this spiritual force to a very weak level, but the burly man directly scattered like a paper man. But this burly man's corpse did not bleed at all. The burly man's head that had fallen to the ground still had a smile on it. "Guest, what do you mean by this? Are you refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit?" At the same time, everyone in the black tent quieted down. Everyone turned to look at Lung Shiqi with a smile. That kind of smile made people shudder. The old man squinted and said, "We are treating the guest well. But the guest wants to kill. This is your fault. Everyone who was originally sitting came over with a bowl of wine. They still had a warm smile and said, "Guest, come and drink. Drink a bowl. Don't be shy." Like a demon's voice that lingered in Lung Shiqi's ears directly penetrated into his heart, making his state of mind unconsciously had a trace of extreme irritation. "Imph," Lung Shiqi snorted and said, trying to be mysterious. Immediately, the spiritual force around his body erupted like an invisible vortex swept out. In an instant, the entire black canopy was sent flying, and everyone around it was torn apart. What was even stranger was that this time, all of them looked just like real people. Blood splattered everywhere, broken limbs flew everywhere, and some scarlet blood even splashed onto Lung Shiqi's face. The feeling of blood was so real, it was as if he had killed hundreds of innocent lives in an instant. Lung Shiqi wiped the blood off his face in a daze. An indescribable emotion emerged in his heart. In fact, to this day, there were many people who died at the hands of Lung Shiqi, but all the people he killed were spirit cultivators, and they were all killed for the sake of survival, for the sake of benefits. He had never killed an ordinary person. He had always treated killing as a method, not a bloodthirsty person. Now the scene in front of him was like hell on earth, but it felt so real that it actually aroused the killing intent in his heart. Just as everyone in the vicinity was dead, Lung Shiqi only felt a blur in front of his eyes. He was actually standing at the entrance of the village again. There was a funeral team coming out. The leader was still the expressionless middle-aged man, and at the end of the team was still the kind-looking old man. What was going on? At this moment, Lung Shiqi did not know why he had returned here, nor did he know how to recover. He also did not know how the old man was resurrected. Although he knew that all of this should be fake and was very likely an illusion, his eyes and feelings told him that all of this was real. The old man walked towards Lung Shiqi and said, "Guest, you must have come from afar. Why don't you come into the village and rest for a while?" Everything was exactly the same as what Lung Shiqi had experienced before. Even the old man's words were exactly the same. What the hell is going on? Lung Shiqi suddenly felt extremely annoyed. He used his finger as a sword and instantly released hundreds of triple extinction sword chi that covered the entire village. The icy blue triple extinction sword chi swept everywhere, constantly strangling everyone here. In just a dozen breaths of time, the entire village had become a dead village. What Lung Shiqi did not know was that his eyes had begun to turn slightly red. However, in the next moment, the village was restored again, and a group of people rushed out of the village. Lung Shiqi's killing intent surged, and his eyes flashed with a bloody light. Suddenly, he formed the grasping flower seal, and a faint Buddhist light appeared, suppressing the killing intent in his heart. Phew! Lung Shiqi let out a heavy breath. He had just killed all the villagers in the village, and they were all ordinary people, who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Although he knew that these were not ordinary people, the feeling was extremely real. It almost made him addicted to endless killing, and become a madman who only knew how to kill. Fortunately, his willpower was strong, and he had the grasping flower seal, a Buddhist secret technique that specialized in suppressing evil thoughts, so he woke up just as he was about to become a demon. He could not help but think to himself, "This is really something." In this chaotic area, his eyes and the power of perception could no longer be trusted. Instead, they had become a channel for him to fall into a predicament. Then Lung Shiqi simply closed his Byakugan and withdrew all his perception. At this time, the old man came over again and said the same thing. This time, Lung Shiqi also smiled and said, "Okay, this junior has been traveling for a long time and is really tired. If it is convenient, this junior would like to stay here for a night." The smile on the old man's face froze for a moment. Then he brought Lung Shiqi into the black shelter. The burly man once again handed over a bowl of smelly wine. This time Lung Shiqi did not attack. Instead, he drank the bowl of wine very generously. The disgusting smell immediately filled his mouth and nose, making him feel nauseous. However, Lung Shiqi's expression did not change. Instead he praised, good wine, another bowl." The smiles on the old man and the burly man's faces stiffened for a moment, but they immediately returned to normal. The burly man directly picked up a jar of wine and shouted, "Our guest is really straightforward. Today we must drink this jar of wine. Come, 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 let's get drunk." Lung Shiqi rolled up his sleeves and started eating and drinking with the table full of people. He smiled as he swallowed the rotten food and corpse water into his stomach. After a while, a little boy about 4 or 5 years old wearing a red tutu came bouncing over. A glint flashed across Lung Shiqi's eyes as he thought to himself, "Finally." Chapter 462. The boy hopped over to Lung Shiqi's side and stared at him with his big round eyes full of curiosity. The boy asked in a coquettish voice, "Big brother, do you know what you're eating and drinking?" Lung Shiqi looked at the food on the table and said, "Of course I know, but is this all you've got? Do you have any other tricks up your sleeve? Or is it that very few people have been able to do this for a long time, so you didn't prepare any backup plans?" The boy's expression instantly turned incomparably cold, and his originally innocent eyes were also covered with a layer of frightening gray fog. The surrounding villagers also withdrew their smiles, and all of them stared coldly at Lung Shiqi. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been scared to death in this environment and atmosphere, but Lung Shiqi smiled coldly. "What, you want to kill me now that I've exposed you? You're trying to make me lose myself here, become a madman, and finally drive me to my death. I have to say that your methods are indeed very clever. This is a bit like an illusion, but it's also beyond illusion. No matter how strong my spiritual power is, it's useless. Instead, I'll fall deeper. So if I want to break out of this situation, if I want to kill you, what I need is not strength, but a state of mind." At this point, Lung Shiqi gently flicked his finger, and a translucent ripple spread out. Wherever the ripple went, the scene turned into nothingness, including the old man, the strong man, the tables of banquets, and the houses disappeared. In the end, there was only a strange monster half the size of a person left in front of Lung Shiqi. This thing was like an irregular cloud of smoke, floating in front of Lung Shiqi. At this moment, the monster's hollow eyes revealed boundless astonishment. "You, how can you break my illusion?" "I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you," Lung Shiqi said emotionlessly. Then he straightened his palm and slashed out the god-vanquishing void-slashing blade towards the monster's vital spirit. The monster did not seem to have a physical body. It would have been very difficult to deal with, but the god-vanquishing void slash happened to be the bane of this kind of creature. The monster was instantly cut in half and returned to chaos as it screamed. Only a fist-sized crystal was left behind. It was the soul stone. Lung Shiqi weighed the soul stone in his hand. The soul stone didn't look small, but it weighed about 3 or 4 taels. He then compared the soul stones that he had obtained from killing the stone monsters, and found that the larger soul stones seemed to be much purer. The two added together weighed about half a caddy, which was equivalent to half a token. "Not bad," Lung Shiqi murmured. But at this moment, Nine Leaves' voice suddenly sounded. This is the smell of souls." Upon hearing this, Lung Shiqi was shocked. "Senior Nine Leaf, you've awakened?" "No, I haven't completed my advancement yet. Right now, it's just a wisp of my consciousness. I was attracted by the aura of souls." Lung Shiqi thought to himself, so that's how it is. But from what Nine Leaf said, this soul stone actually contains soul power. After refining this thing, it can directly increase the strength of the soul. Help me collect some. As for the reward, we'll talk about it after I fully awaken." Nine Leaf continued, but her voice sounded a little weak. "Okay, but Senior Nine Leaf, how do I refine this thing?" "Just eat it." Lung Shiqi. "Eat it?" As a monster, Nine Leaf could eat it, but Lung Shiqi could eat it directly? However, when Lung Shiqi asked again, he didn't get a reply from Nine Leaf. Lung Shiqi pinched the soul stone and put it in his mouth. Suddenly, there was a burst of stench. It was really difficult to swallow. He quickly held his breath, thinking that he had eaten the most disgusting things in the illusion anyway. This was nothing. He steeled his heart, opened his mouth, and swallowed the soul stone. Soon after, he felt a strange power enter his mind. It was as if a pair of gentle hands were comforting his soul, making him feel as if he was floating. Then his spiritual power also increased a little. Leng Shiqi carefully sensed it. Just this small piece of soul stone had increased his spiritual power by as much as half a month of refining. With a joyful look on his face, he muttered, "This soul stone is really good stuff. No wonder even 9 Leave is envious." Of course, although this thing was good, if you wanted to get a soul stone, you first had to be alive to take it. Leng Shiqi went from the earth region to the wood region, and then here. The dangers he experienced were extremely high. For example, that strange monster just now. If it wasn't for his extraordinary willpower, he would have lost himself long ago. Speaking of which, if he wanted to refine the soul stone to increase his spiritual power and collect some for 9 Leave, how would he pass the test? Lei Mayan had said that only the top 5 people with the most soul stones and tokens would pass the test. So now Leng Shiqi needed a large amount of soul stones, a lot of soul stones. Leng Shiqi looked left and right, then chose a direction and continued forward. At the same time, on the other side of the chaos region, there was a viscous sea of blood. In the center of the sea of blood stood an exquisite body. It was Delta Origi. At this moment, the sea of blood around Delta Origi condensed into blood-colored spears that stabbed into her body. Then the blood-colored spears disappeared, but another spear appeared from another angle. Now Delta Origi's body had dozens of bloody holes. Blood flowed out of her body, but her expression was abnormally tenacious and cold. Her eyes were as bright as gems, and revealed a cold expression. "Is this all you've got? Is this all you've got?" "Not enough. Far from enough. The pain I've endured is far beyond your imagination." Delta Origi roared like a madwoman. She used her fingers as a sword, and a translucent blood sword condensed in the void. The blood sword slashed down, and actually tore through the sea of blood, hooking out a monster that looked like an octopus. The sword flashed, and the monster was instantly beheaded. A lump of soft flesh spread out on the ground, still wriggling. The sea of blood around them disappeared, and even the wounds and blood on Delta Origi's body disappeared. If Leng Shiqi was here, he would definitely recognize it. It was this method again. It was similar to an illusion, but on a higher level. If Delta Origi broke the trap, her wounds would be fake. But if she didn't break the trap, those wounds would be real. In a dark wasteland, a group of monsters with only one mouth were devouring a body. In the end, only a skeleton was left. However, the skeleton still flickered with a faint yellow light. "Eat, eat. If you don't eat now, you won't have the chance." After that, the skeleton actually grew flesh and bones, instantly transforming into a thin middle-aged man. He was Wu Diao. Wu Diao waved his hands, and without any spiritual light, the ground suddenly shook. The ground surged like waves, and in just a few breaths, the man-eating monsters were buried here forever. In a magnificent palace, more than a dozen young girls were dancing. There were also a few girls sitting around a handsome young man, whispering into each other's ears. The young man's eyes were not moved at all. On the contrary, they were filled with disdain and killing intent. "You dare to provoke this young master with this kind of trash?" Scram. Then the young man stretched out his 5 fingers, and starlight appeared on his palm. Endless starlight shone throughout the palace, and the girls were all turned into ashes. This young man was Zhuge Puha. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.